Hi, everyone. This is Catherine Michelle, and we're here with Greg Fernandez Jr. and Sophia. And we are going to be giving you just a brief update on some information Sophia has brought forward, and it's stuff I just read today. And just want to kind of get you guys in the loop of what it is we're going to cover. We would cover tonight. They're ready. I am not. I just didn't have time to go over all of it. However, this information is vital, I believe, to the case, and it has to do with the phone records and the financial records of David and Camille Crowley. So, Sophia, could you please tell us what it is that you found?
Well, it was several things. I noticed it about a year ago, right after my hand surgery, and I was just sitting on the couch looking over files and everything. And let's go back into these files here. Some of the things that I noticed was that David stopped making phone calls in November. That he doesn't make any more phone calls or any more text messages. And I found that very odd because it wasn't lining up with what they were saying in the police report or what the friends were saying. And
can you tell us what? Can you tell us what phone number that was?
It was to Midas.
But do you know? But I mean, which phone record? Like, what was David's phone number? Do you remember?
Let me go back here.
Okay. So I think that'll be really important because we have documents. We have documents on 4 phone numbers that are tied to David and Camille.
Let's see here.
And another thing that I'm going to look up here is also when did, and maybe either of you might know this too, when did Camille's father cut off their plan? Was it in October or November? I think that's why they have so many phones, too.
I believe it was in October.
I think you're right on that.
And I need to go back and open these records up. Catherine, do you have anything open on your computer?
Yeah, I'm looking at the spreadsheets you created. And what is it that you wanted me to look at?
Actually, it was a member called Caleb. His name was Caleb, and he created these spreadsheets.
Oh, okay. Well, he did a fantastic job.
Right? He did an amazing job.
Yeah, I love them. They're great.
It's a great, quick guide.
Now, we probably haven't spread out there as much as we should, I think. I don't know how many people have actually seen this.
Yeah, when Sophia sent it to me today, it was like the first time I'd seen it in this format, and I'm like, this is so much easier to read, right. And it's right in your face that communication stopped with both of them way before any issues supposedly arose with them, it doesn't coincide with the last time anybody said they talked to them, or it doesn't coincide with the timeline of David writing that email to Jason Allen. Just nothing. The phone records don't jive with the rest of everything else.
And Camille had her last 2 phone calls were to Wells Fargo, and it was that day that the payment bounced for the mortgage. And her phone calls, I believe, were to the automated system because they were after hours. And she possibly could have been transferring money, only because they were after hours.
Maybe checking her balance.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, making sure that the payment posted.
That's what I was thinking. Good Lord.
But this is where it got confusing for me, because there are 4 different phone numbers, and I do believe at least one of those there's phone records up until January.
Well, they're showing calls coming in to these phones, but they were not answered. When you look at the duration of the call, it is 0 seconds, 0 seconds. So a lot of calls are still coming in to both sets of phones that David and Kamel had, but there was no response from the other side.
Right.
And one phone he did have forwarded to his other phone. Mm-hmm. And that was, I have way too many files on this.
So I'm looking at page 42 of the 94 pages, and this is where it does show that that David or Kamel's dad did cut off this one particular phone in October. Mm-hmm. I just wish it would say the number. I think.
So if that's the case, then this spreadsheet and these phone records that we're looking at for December were on the phone that they had active. So the calls, when they stop communication, David stops communication in November, Kamel stops communication in December. So from that point on, these would be the only two phones that were working. And so according to these documents that are recorded and proof of their activity, there is zero activity from David starting from November 18th. Nothing. And when you look at his phone records before, he was quite active.
And he did call Chris Peck on the 18th also. Mm-hmm. That phone number for David is 612-999-4890.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's...
He called Midas on the 26th of November. That was his very last phone call.
What is Midas? Is that the gold?
I'm not exactly sure. I took it to Midas Auto.
I'd look into the gold. Midas is tied with Alex Jones. He used to be a sponsor for Alex Jones. Look that
That's
up.
a very good thought.
Yeah, and when I'm looking at this, though, when I saw that said call to Midas, we have no idea if David made that call or if someone else made that call. Because when his last call is on the 18th, and his mom then calls him 6 times on the 20th, a text from Rick on the 20th, 18 calls from Kate on the 21st, and a text from Dan Crowley on the 22nd, 2 calls from Kate on the 22nd, and then now all of a sudden there's a call to Midas on the 26th. Now, his mom had been trying to reach him and Kamel. When you look at both of their phone records, Kate was calling them both all hours of the day and night, up to 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, without any response from either of them. And this is totally eye-opening. And this is why we want you, the listeners, to be prepared. We're going to do a really in-depth show on this. And Sophia, could you tell us what led you down this path again? Could you complete that story and tell us how you ended up zeroing in on this information?
Oh, there's just so many things. When you look at the police reports, and I was looking at that, and I was checking his phone records, and things just weren't adding up. Because, for instance, you hear the brother say, well, I texted him in December. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to check the records to see if this happened. And December comes. I don't see anything from Dan Jr. in December.
No.
At all. And I see 2 from Danny August Mason. I see something from Kate Crowley. And the other very interesting thing is no family calls them, either of them, at Christmas time.
Right. Nor on Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like holidays. Did it not mean anything for this family?
Yeah, when it says no calls placed or received for either person, David or Kamel, that was a huge red flag for me.
No, and that's both of their phones that they had active at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And, I mean, we could play devil's advocate and say that stuff was done through Messenger. But it's not in the police reports either. And they made sure to show text messages from family or from, well, I mean, like for Camille, they showed all these message threads to her friend or to Allison.
Mm-hmm.
But they show nothing for Thanksgiving. They show nothing for Christmas or Christmas Day. Why isn't that in the police report? Wouldn't that be proof? Or how about actual proof, written form, that he actually contacted Chris Peck in December? Where's that text message? Why isn't there a screenshot added to the police report?
Right, because that was supposed to be the big, where he supposedly went and bought weed, correct? And it was supposed to be done through a text message, but yet there's no proof of that. And not even on these phone records, you know, he calls him in November or texts him in November, call to Chris Peck 3 seconds. So that's, you know, what, you phone rings and they hangs up. It's like, really?
So that would be another thing to try to get, would be the exchange between David and Chris Peck, right? Because they got it from somewhere.
Yeah, because it shows Chris texted David on the 12th of November, and then David makes a 3-second phone call on the 18th of November. And then there's nothing until the 26th where it says a call to Midas, but we have no idea who made that call, because in between, his mom had been trying to reach him a lot.
Well, that's why
calls, 6 calls, and no response. Yeah.
Well, that's why I wonder if there is another phone after this one that David ended this phone service in November, because the police, you know, they say that going through David's phone record that they had that they, you know, that's where they learned about Chris Peck. So there's got to be something in there.
Warrant,
well, then it would mean that he
only
had
show
3 phone numbers. Yeah.
And
all the records only show 2, correct?
No, he has 4.
Each.
There's 4 numbers total.
No, 2 for Kamel, 2 for David,
gotcha.
not 4 for each, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that's
for
what
each.
the search warrants show.
Yes. Yeah.
And if there's another phone out there, they did not obtain those records legally because it's not in the search warrant. I could be wrong, but...
So in all 4 of the phone records that we have 4 PDFs. In all 4 of those, there's no call made on, what date is this? On December 19th, 2014 at 7:22 a.m. to Chris Peck from David Crowley?
No.
We have the actual phone number here. Well, I'm going to look this up. This is one of the reason when I first got these 94 pages, I personally redacted people's phone numbers and where people lived. And now it's coming back to haunt me because now I got to look at the unredacted ones.
I believe that the number that you are seeing is Chris Peck's phone number.
Oh, okay. So where it says was given some information that a text message was sent from David Crowley's phone to a phone number of, okay, so that's just Chris Peck's number, not, that should help too, though, I guess. And this is weird. Now rereading it on page 28 of the 94 pages, this is written by Tommy Booth. On 1/19/2015, Detective Shane Klokonis had given me some information that a text message was sent from David Crowley's phone to a phone number of which belonged to Chris Peck. So this isn't even saying that they looked at a phone record Unless, so this Detective Shane Klaukonis should be the one who obtained the phone records, and what he's telling Detective Tommy Booth on 119 should have been based on the phone records, unless it's based on some hearsay, which is possible too. Maybe an informant trying to throw Chris Peck under the bus.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of this stuff is just, it's like it's falling into place now, you know, when looking at these phone records and talking to all the professionals that all of us have spoken with, you know, to me it's like, and I could be way off base, doesn't mean I'm telling the truth, or I'm not lying on purpose. I could be wrong, or I could be mistaken. But this, you know, from the moment you look at the scene, it seems staged. But now with all of this, it was not only staged, but it was pre-planned. And, you know, I'm just like, wow, it's mind-boggling.
It is. And then you hear people say, well, the proof is in the police reports. You know, the proof of his guilt is in the police reports, but it's not. It absolutely is not. And if there was proof of this transaction between Chris Peck and David, they would have included it.
Well, yeah,
not unless they're forced to, right? Not unless we force them to.
Well, no, because if they're listing all of the calls, when they're getting the information, when they put in the search warrant and they requested the documents from the phone company isn't going to sit there and go, oh, wait, let's hold that one out. Because, you know, on the 13th of November, it shows that David texted Kamel.
Right.
It shows that, and it shows that David's getting text, but it does not show that David ever sent a text or a call to Chris Peck in December at all. So that thing about him doing that, and they picked up the weed on the 19th or whatever, it's just at this point, according to the information they sent, yes, it's a story, it's a lie, it's fabricated, which just, again, just goes like, wow, where are the lies going to stop in this case? Oh.
And then the other thing that really, really gets to me is in the documentary, David's father states that David was struggling for money. And this is absolutely not true. You look at his financial records, he had money. Kamel was not holding that family up. David had money of his own.
Yes.
And that is another lie that is being put out there by this documentary, and the family is supporting it.
And that's frustrating because, you know, when you're looking at his financials and he has a 6-figure credit limit, you can't have that if you don't have money. And the fact, I think we were talking about this earlier too, the family's obviously very well off. I know very wealthy people myself, and it is a yearly thing, or as often as they need to, they gift family members the legal amount, which I believe at that time was probably the $14,000, which is why his dad wrote him that check, because you can do that at one time, gift somebody. It's either one time or that amount within a year. I can't remember. But then it's a gift. It's tax deductible for the giver, but not taxed and by the receiver. So this is something that had been going on for a long time. And $14,000, it's not a drop in the bucket. I mean, maybe for people who are really rich, but if they were struggling like they're trying to convince us they were, $14,000 would have meant the difference between keeping their home and losing it. So they weren't poor by any stretch of the imagination. And looking at all of their mortgage payments, you know, other than the goof up when the money didn't hit the bank in time, but even then they were able to fix that right away. And so bills were always paid. Credit cards were often paid in advance. There was a credit on the statement because another purchase would be coming in, so they were trying to offset what was going to be charged. These were not people who were struggling.
And let me be clear. His minimum payment could have been maybe $50, $75. He was paying $2,000, $3,000 sometimes for a minimum payment. And when it was only supposed to be $50 to $75.
Right.
So this really, really is an eye-opener when you look or when you think about the whole lie of them struggling financially.
Yeah, it totally it blows that
true.
completely out of the water. Yeah, it's not true in the slightest, you know. And I'm telling you, when I'm still kind of like overwhelmed by all the stuff you sent and reading this and looking at it. It takes a while to sink in, and I'm just like going, wow, there is zero proof. And the more that they've given us, to me, and the way I'm viewing it, the more it appears to me that they were totally set up. This was an ongoing event for quite some time. This was not a snap or spur of the moment murder. This was planned out and done in stages.
Could this have started with the 2012 trailer? Because that always felt like there's lots of red flags back in 2012. 2012 was a crazy year, and I wondered if David was set up, could have started around, well, I mean, the trailer came out in 2012, so earlier than that. But I think it might have been focused, one of the theories, right, is that it was focused around that time. Could it have came later? Sure, but we're all talking about the same people who were part of that script, so...
Yeah, and it just makes so much sense that, you know, those who were saying that David was pulling away from them, I think he found something out about them. I think he discovered whatever that truth may be, and we may never know, but it cost him his life. Yeah, it cost him his life. It cost his family their life. And, you know, he found something. And this was like I said, it feels like it was a long time planned because it was so overdone and not done correctly, that this was just not something you could sit down and go, okay, wait, now you go do that. Wait, I'm going to go do this. You know, we have 2 hours to set the scene.
This also could have started when David was in the service too. Could have been some payback for something there.
The murderers could have done it for almost any reason. The scene looks like they initially set it up as a hate crime and then went back and overdid it with that bullet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they were to take the focus, you're right, and make it like a hate crime by writing on the wall. But obviously they were too stupid to realize that, you know, true killings are not... I have never, and I've read up on a lot, and I've talked to a lot of people from that country who've been over there, and not once has anybody ever seen or have I seen when an honor killing was done that they ever wrote in that person's blood on the wall. That was such a faux pas on their part. It wasn't even funny. I'm like, wow, that was, to me, that's like Hollywood staging, a wannabe actor, a wannabe director. So here, let's do this because everybody will think that. And right away, it's like, no, you just gave yourself up.
Well, they're still giving themselves up.
Yeah, I agree. So,
and I mean, it's just not there. The proof is not there of guilt at all. All the excuses that they have given can be debunked by these records.
Yeah.
And just like, and I know I keep harping on this, the alcohol. If David was driven to a murder-suicide because of alcohol, and if there was alcohol in that house, the police would have photographed it.
Yes.
Yeah, that would have fit their script, for sure.
Exactly. And it's just not there. There's no photographs of that whatsoever. There's not even a photograph of alcohol in, like, sitting around. There's no bottles, no beer cans, nothing.
Yeah, and most people I know who drink, they'll have a 12-pack or something in their garage, as well as having some in the fridge, but they always have a stash in the garage. And you see his whole garage, and I see no, like you said, no evidence of alcohol at all. Nothing.
it's just not there. And so that's just another fabricated lie.
And it was like they had to keep changing their stories. The stories kept changing. I think it's because a lot of people kept asking questions, kept asking real questions. And as those real questions came up, they had to pivot. And you don't have to pivot if you're telling the truth. The truth is the truth. And I think that's what raised a lot of eyebrows, and I think that's why there's so many people still so invested, whether privately or publicly. A lot of people are still invested into this case, and it's getting bigger. And a lot of people, especially either military, whether they're current, past, present, or future, seems to hit them a little hard. Seems to hit them really hard, because that could be them.
Because, yeah, and the movie is implying that David snapped because of military service. And that seems to insult all of us veterans.
Yes.
It should. It definitely should insult you all, because it's
there's no proof that there's PTSD either.
Right.
He wasn't medically discharged from the military. It would say right there on his DD-214.
Mm-hmm.
I used to type these up when I was in the military. It's not there. Mine says service connected. But...
And we do know he was receiving a small disability from the VA, but he was also in a vehicle that was hit by an IED. And so, he was injured when the bomb went off in the vehicle they were in. But that had nothing to do with suffering PTSD to the extent that he had to go seek counseling. And the military never even said, hey, I think he has issues. Because if someone's having issues, the military has no problem saying, okay, they need to go talk to a psychiatrist. But that was never the case with any of the records I've seen on David. And again, the disability pay was associated with his injury. And it wasn't a very big injury, because you could see him walking and stuff like that, but he still got, some disability. And it did not affect his ability to do his day life, and let alone write that script. I mean, that takes a lot of mental focus. And he was able to do that nonstop and work for weeks at a time. And someone with PTSD couldn't do that.
Right. People would have noticed.
Yeah.
He was out in what, 2009 or something? I forget. Yeah, 2009. It's like 4 years. So, no.
It really could have been about anything. And he was getting, I think it was $400 and something. I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, very much.
That's a very low percent. I'm thinking maybe 20 or 30 at the most. And he had a child and he was married, so I'm thinking possibly 20%. And so I receive 100%, and my children are 18 and above. So I know that.
Yeah, see, you know about it. You know how it works.
Mm-hmm. And he really could have been raking in a lot more if it was severe PTSD, especially if it was severe enough to cause him to snap.
Right.
So, plus, it's not written anywhere in the police reports that he had PTSD.
Yeah. And I'm sure that you, being in the military, you personally have seen and know what it looks like when someone is suffering from a bout of PTSD. Now, when we were in Fort Bragg, and my husband at the time was stationed over there, and that was when a plane crashed on the tarmac and it hit a C-5, and there were a bunch of soldiers that were burned. Some of them died. Some of them were severely burned. And these guys are coming in, and as they're coming into the ER, I am telling you, when someone suffers that something that is truly PTSD, you see it. they don't function in the same way as someone without PTSD. I mean, there is a huge cognizant difference. There's, and these guys would just sit there and just stare at you, and they wouldn't even talk. And some of them did okay. Others, they never spoke a word after that accident. But then you look at David, and not only is he writing a script, but he's doing trailers. He's making film. He's going out and he's promoting. He's pitching his movie to Hollywood. This guy is more than functioning at a more than competent level, and on an extended period of time.
Just going back 1 second to the PTSD on page 32. PTSD is actually mentioned, but it's told that David's friend, Mitch Heil, says that David did not have PTSD.
Correct.
He did not believe that David had PTSD or was suffering from PTSD, which makes me think that the police asked him and not that he just volunteered this.
Yeah. And Mitch Heil would know, because wasn't that his longtime friend from grade school?
Yes.
And that they actually went into the service together.
Yeah.
They went
he
to
would know.
basic training together. Right. Yeah, he's been the only one, I think, that from my view, his story has stayed consistent. Everything that his story to me, I have not seen it waver. I have not seen it. He's always thought David was guilty, but he thinks that it was this whole Gray State project. But he's never one, at least I haven't seen it yet, where where his story has changed to the point where it's just like he's definitely lying. I haven't seen that yet. See it with a lot of other people, but not him.
Yeah.
I mean, these records, they bring up so many more questions. Just when you think you're going to get answers, you get something else that just brings up 100 more questions. And that's what's so frustrating about this case.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Like when I first saw that today, and it's like, that's why I wrote an email. I said, please excuse my French. It was just like, I had to say something because it was like such a shock. And I'm like, how long have you known about this? And you're like, for about a year now. I'm like, oh, we have to tell everybody. This has got to get out there. Because the phone records and everything don't match with the official's narrative.
And I've been saying something this whole time. It's just nobody really picks up on it, or it just doesn't translate right when you're writing it down on the internet. And so thank you, Catherine.
No, you're welcome. It's like I told you. It's like I've listened to every one of the videos you've done with Greg, and this never came across to me. I never got the gist of it. So when I saw it today, and I'm like, wait, why hasn't this been said? And when you're like, but I have said something, and I'm like, okay, but my brain didn't pick up on it. So, I mean, I think a lot of us just didn't pick up on it. It just went right over our heads. And when you start to realize that David stopped all communication on mid-November, Kamel stops all communication December, and we know those bodies, and I will stand by this until the day I die, those bodies were not in that house for 3 weeks. Those bodies were only dead for maybe up to 10 days at the most. And so where were they? What was going on? Who was controlling their movements? What was happening to this family? And to David? Why wasn't David in communication with Kamel between the time he stops communication and then Kamel stops communication? There's not even any proof that they even called or talked to each other, where before they would make phone calls or text each other. But then nothing. It all stops.
Another thing about the documentary, and I clearly remember this, is they're talking about David constantly calling Kamel's phone number. But
yeah,
you
and we know
the
that's
phone
a
record,
lie.
and you don't see it.
Yeah,
you just do not see it.
It's a flat out lie. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what in that documentary was true? Nothing that I could find so far. Okay,
And
that's just me being
after
snarky,
seeing
but...
all this, I even asked Greg flat out. I was like, what do we know about David and Kamel that hasn't been told in the documentary? What do we know about them? And you have to think about it. It's like everything that we know about him has been from the documentary or from the family. But you go back to the records, and anything that has been stated, whether it was the documentary or through family interviews, the majority of it is disinformation. Mm-hmm. It can be debunked by the facts, and the facts are the police records. Whether it is information that they got from the phone companies, for instance, the phone records, or the credit report, or, I know a lot of people really don't realize this, but there was a mortgage company that was in contact with David, and it was in Ocean View, I believe, and he received 2 credit checks. I believe either it was in November or December, and then again in January, after they supposedly passed away. And with that credit report, I would hazard a guess that they probably would have been approved through this mortgage company. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's planning for the future.
Right. And a big future that includes moving states. You know, that is not somebody who's going to go off the deep end and just snap all of a sudden and be so despondent.
Mm-hmm. And it just infuriates me that they expected us to take this documentary as gospel and to believe everything in it and stop asking questions. They made a documentary on these people's lives, and now we are being told to stop asking questions, mm-hmm. that it's not our business. You just lied about these people over and over, and now you're asking us to stop asking questions? It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
You guys put everything out publicly.
Yeah, and it's like they're mad because we're asking questions, because this is like the ones who actually killed this family. It's like they were so inept and so stupid to make so many ridiculous mistakes. And it's the same thing with the documentary. They think that because they pull the wool over their own eyes, they think everybody else is as stupid as they are, and they're going to believe it. And the vast majority of people who watch that documentary are going, oh, wait a second, there's something really wrong. You guys didn't do this right.
And it doesn't add up. Their reactions don't add up. Mm-mm. And I mean, like 1 or 2, you could probably think, oh, they're still grieving. It's very possible that they took medication, and that's why they're a little off. But it's everybody.
Right.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that is never mentioned in that the whole documentary, one of the biggest things that is never mentioned is that Kamel's side of the family pulled out of the documentary, did not want to be part of it. So they knew that this documentary was crap even before it ever aired.
Yeah. And they're not about to say, like you said, they're not about to tell anybody that. No. You know, they just, bypass it and hope nobody asks the questions. But it's like, yeah.
But why isn't Kamel's family telling, they need to really step it up. They really need to step it up because they know what's up. They mm-hmm. got to know what's up.
Yep. And it's like I was saying before, it comes across to me that where the families are concerned, it's like the Stockholm syndrome. They're best friends with people who may or may not have had a part in this, or know somebody, or may not know somebody who had a part in this. And because you can't accept that type of brutality, it's just like, kidnap victims. They, will protect the person who's harmed them. And in this case, it's like they're protecting everybody who has said some pretty horrible things about their family.
I mean, can you imagine joking about your friend's murder?
No.
And I mean, just some of the messages that were posted that either Mason Hendricks had said or, other people connected to this case have said, and it's very possible that they could have been sarcastic, but the low, just the tackiness of it, and talking about the blood and writing on the wall, and it's horrible. How could you joke about stuff like that? These are your friends.
Yeah.
That you supposedly care so much about. And you're sitting there making jokes about it. And it's very crass.
Yeah, and I don't find it remotely funny at all. And I don't even, even if it's sarcastic or even done out of frustration, that would have still been the last thing anybody would have joked about.
Mm-hmm.
And this was which Mason? Mason Hendricks?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's the guy who told me that he wanted to become a cop. He had a degree in law enforcement. He wanted to work with the troubled youth. We found out that the cops are all, there's too many reasons why he couldn't do that. And that's the path of an informant. Now, I'm not accusing Mason Hendricks of being one, but, he was on the right path to be set up to be compromised, to actually be one. And if he really wanted to work with troubled youth, then he should have put more time into this case and investigated why a 5-year-old was killed. If he really cares about the troubled youth, there's your troubled youth. The troubled youth that aren't here now. David was a troubled youth. They all had their own things going on. But if you really care, then you would want to know what the truth is. You would not give up. You'd read the documents. He didn't read them all. You look at everything that you possibly could. You can't tell me that you know more than me if you haven't read everything that I've read, and it's all public stuff.
Right. And that's so frustrating when they do that. They're like going, oh, you guys just don't know. And you're like, yeah, we're the ones who are reading everything.
And then in the documentary, they painted Camille as like a battered wife.
Yeah.
But there's absolutely no proof of that. And as I said, David is not calling her phone nonstop, obsessively, like they stated. And if Camille acted that way, if she did at work where she supposedly ducked out through the back, could there have been a different reason? Or if it even happened? You take a lot of things and just the different things that were said in the documentary, and you have to just throw it out after you read the proof and all the records, because it's just not true. It was propaganda.
Can you picture if they would have been able to make it seem like Camille was involved in some type of pact to kill her kid? I think even less people would think that David Crowley was guilty. That's where they were going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and none of that makes sense at all. I mean, not only does the crime scene not support that theory, but who they are as parents and how much they love that little girl. No. That was just, they were grasping for straws, throwing out a million different of their ideas, hoping somebody would latch on to something.
Right. Well, a few people did latch on to it.
They did, I'm sure. The problem they have with this whole hate crime thing is, they've basically muddied those waters now, because it's not a hate crime, but it's in those stats. David did not, there's no proof that David was abusive to his wife, but he's in those stats too. he's in these stats that he should not be of. And at some point, somebody has to question, well, if he's in them, how do we know that the other stats are true? And there are real hate crimes, and there are real people that do beat up on their spouses and their kids and do horrible things. And so when we're talking about that, it's so serious that you can't just jump to that conclusion because you want to, because that puts you back into your safe zone. Because all you're doing is just lying to yourself and then lying to everybody else.
Yeah, and when they were bringing up the old David was abusive, and when I found out he was on that list, for domestic violence, I've said this before. I have been a victim of domestic violence. I know what those people are like. He doesn't fit any of the criteria, and the fact that you have somebody who's innocent and you're putting them on a list, making them out to be the villain when the real perpetrators are out walking free, I have a big problem with that. Huge problem with that.
Yeah. And you're not the only one to say that, Catherine. That last conference call that you all had, the really long one, there was another domestic violence survivor who came on and said the same exact thing. She said, I'm a survivor, and I know what an abuser looks like, and David didn't come off as that.
Yeah. I mean, I knew right away that was not true when I saw how he responded, and I've said this a million times, how David responded when the person that was with Eric Sayward, the guy behind the camera, going, oh, where's your daughter? I want to meet your daughter. And David positions himself. He blocks that guy's view of his family. And he's like, no, they're not feeling safe right now. And I'm like, I'm surprised David didn't deck the guy, to be honest with you, because that was just so creepy and uncalled for. And usually with abusers, they don't care. They don't want to protect their family. It's not about that. I mean, they're highly aggressive and volatile, and there's nothing I've seen about David in any respect. And not to say he never got angry, because that's crazy, but, just his whole demeanor is not one of someone who has that history of domestic violence.
And I need to come out on the record for this. For those going around and saying that there's a journal out there with proof of this, then if that's what you're going by as your proof, you guys need to show it.
Yep.
We are giving evidence, as you guys have demanded so many times. We're giving you proof that David is innocent. We're giving you proof and debunking your lies. Now, if you're claiming that there is a journal out there stating that David was an abuser, you guys need to prove that. You need to show it. And it has to be written in his handwriting. I'm not going to take this computer-generated day one stuff, because that can be edited. You can go back at any time and write whatever you want. I know, because I downloaded that app and tested that theory.
Yeah, I would also add that anybody that says that there is any other journal out there, that the cops are saying that there is not.
Okay, see, and that's good to know too. So then the police right there are saying that they're lying.
Yep.
The police would know.
We have that in writing.
Yeah. So we can just toss that out the window right now. Whoever's saying that there's a journal, they're lying, because the police have flat out said that's not true.
And now the question is, why are they lying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they put a spotlight on themselves. They're not victims. They're inserting themselves and actually making themselves suspicious persons involved in this case. Whether it's after the fact, it's fine. We can all say it's after. But whatever. They're still inserting themselves, and they shouldn't.
Yeah, all seriousness. If they don't want the spotlight on them, then stay out of it.
Yeah.
Don't be adding to this info.
Move stage right.
Yes. Oh, man.
You can't sit there and give disinfo and taunt people who are actually looking into this case and then play the victim. You cannot have it both ways. It
Right.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
right.
I agree. I agree.
Okay, anything else before we wrap up here and
No, I just
come back for a part 2?
Yeah, we'll come back for a part 2 for sure when I have more time to be better prepared and stuff, but this was just so last minute, and thank you guys for actually jumping on board and joining in and getting this out there. But I just think it's something that everybody should be prepared for and know, because this is so important, and I can't believe that the police and nobody else has put this together. So thank you, Sophia, for getting this, for finding this, and for bringing it to our attention.
You're welcome.
We've been talking about this for doing this show for a while, so I'm glad we finally got the time to. But go ahead, Sophia.
Well, it wasn't just me. I mean, there were other people who pointed this out to me also, and so.
Yeah, who's the guy that put the
kudos
that's
to all
Caleb?
of you.
I believe it was Caleb Sanders that put the phone records together. And then there was Christy, who I've done a lot of long late-night chats with, going over these records and rehashing this whole case over and over and over. And Lee. So it wasn't just me. It was other people included.
Kudos to everybody, because this is amazing.
Absolutely.
Well,
and that's what it takes. That's why it's so important to get so many eyes, so many people on this case as possible, because it can't just be 1 or 2 or 3 people. We need everybody to help out as much as you can and do whatever you can.
I agree.
Well, thank you, Greg. And just I want to tell everybody, go out there, read the records. Don't take everything from that documentary as face value, or things that people connected to this case have to say at face value. You go out there and you research it yourself. You'll see the answers. You'll see the disinfo. So please research it. Look, it's there. And thank you, Greg and Catherine. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
All right, good peeps. Until we meet again.
Until then, you guys have a good night.
All right, you too.
Good night.
Mr. Alam did not speak to any of the family. Sidra was the sole person dealing with everything. Miss Alam was really sick at the time, and they were in Dallas in another hospital. So Sidra basically told Mr. Alam, don't worry about anything. I'll take care of it. You worry about Mom. Her husband will take care of the businesses, and she'll handle all of this. So that was what was decided in between all 3 of those.
Do you think that any of that was encouraged by the Gray State team?
So I believe when the whole documentary thing happened, I think, yes, I do believe, I think they took advantage of Sidra, her being naive and, wanting to see the good in everyone, which, even from certain things that had happened and while I was there, I kept telling her, just don't trust everybody. And, it stuck out to me, especially with Mason Hendricks. He really didn't want Mr. Alam on the documentary. He kept pushing for just Sidra. He even told her not to tell Mr. Alam about this documentary. He put her in a position where she was very, she didn't know what to do. But yeah, I definitely think, they kind of liked that they were just dealing with Sidra and not Mr. Alam. Because in all reality, if Mr. Alam had been dealing with all this would have been a whole nother thing. It wouldn't have transpired to all of this. It wouldn't have gotten to this. especially with the documentary.
Have you seen the documentary?
Yes, I have. I have
do you
seen
have any views you want to share?
And, which one? The previous cut or the one that's out there on Netflix?
The previous cut.
Well, what can I say about that? They picked and choose what they wanted to put in there, obviously. They did a lot of editing. They just took out some words that Sidra had said and Mr. Alam had said. But the things that should have been there weren't on there that they really wanted on there.
When you're comparing the two versions, is the narrative a lot different?
The one thing that stuck out to me on the second one, the official one, they kind of try to make Kamel look crazy, in all honesty, by showing her clip. And you know what the crazy part is? Mr. Alam had never seen that footage till the day it got released, so that was the shitty part in all
really?
This. Yeah. We had never seen the footage, and that is why he was so upset that that's his daughter, out there looking crazy, and that's not something they even asked for permission. So, Eric Nelson definitely had an agenda on what he wanted to show. So, after the rough cut, that was sent to Mr. Alam, Mr. Alam basically said he wasn't going to sign any paperwork till he saw what the direction was going to be. And that's something Nelson had said, that, everybody's story was going to be told, and he didn't have an agenda. Just whatever the interviews were, he was just going to present them how they were. So I'm glad Mr. Alam was pretty smart, and, he wanted to see the rough cut before he signed it. I mean, they were pushing Sidra to sign her part. But Mr. Alam made sure and was firm that Sidra didn't do that. Once he got the cut, he was not happy with it. He told him, what's the moral of this movie? What are you trying to get at? What's the point of it if there's no lesson? Because that was what was told to the Alam side. There was going to be a lesson in this. There was going to be something for others so they can be enlightened, PTSD or, mental abuse, or for, with women, just something, there should have been something. In all honesty, there was nothing about that documentary. I don't see why the Crowley side agreed to it. It shows their son as a crazy lunatic. If the roles were reversed, I would have never wanted that out for my son, But that's just me.
Yeah. But if they could show that it wasn't just him and it was her too, then it goes back to the pack theory.
That's kind of what I felt. Like, there was no reason for them to put that footage in of Kamel,
Agreed.
I feel like the reason why they put that in is to put that pack theory in people's head that, maybe she was going crazy, maybe they decided it together. So I just didn't see the point of that. And, another weird footage was Ronnie in the basement, and that made no sense. And the other one, I'm glad you brought that up, the footage of Ronnie talking about the bloody man. They make that seem so bad, and it's actually really funny. It's I don't know if you've seen in the certain movie productions, there's this little red man that shows up before a movie starts.
Can you name one? Because I've been looking for this for months, maybe years now.
I will get back to you on that. I can't find it. I will get back. I will get back to you on that.
Cool.
Yeah, but it's it's this little red man that they always scared her with. He was a little red man, and that footage was actually recorded
Could be a touchstone thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it could be. I think so. I'll look into it. I'll ask Sidra. She probably knows. And I'll let you know. But yeah, it wasn't anything. I mean, yeah, I know as the third person looking in, it sounds so creepy for a little kid to say that, but she was a very, she had a very broad imagination. She talked like that, and they just turned it around and made it sound so awful for her. Like,
No, she was very bright. That's the way.
Yeah.
Like, she was bright. She could understand all the. Yes.
She was extremely bright. When I met her, she it didn't seem like I was talking to a 5-year-old. She was very intelligent for her age, and I think that was part of her autism. I know that they're very bright, and so I think that has to do with that. But yeah, just going back to the documentary, certain things they showed had no reason to be on there, and that were shown were completely out of context. So that was what Mr. Alam didn't like.
Yeah.
And the sad part is, the Alams this had already been decided, and there were like, they got their interviews towards the end. It was around July. Sidra was like 9 months pregnant when they shot all that. So apparently they weren't even going to be on the interviews, and not Danny Mason, I always get them confused. Mason Hendricks convinced Nelson to put them on there. So yeah, it was a pretty shitty part on their end, and I think Crowley's are to blame too, because they had no contact with the Alams. Sidra was always the one trying to contact them for anything, and I get they feel guilty or with what happened, but communication was very, very poor, and it was all through like Mason and Sean, and they shouldn't have been even in the middle of this, in my opinion. It should have been the families talking, and that just wasn't it. Dan Senior never wanted to talk. Just it would be through email or a text message, and a day late or a week late conversation. So yeah, they're a hard family to communicate with, and that's something even his friends say. That's just how they are. That they're a little weird, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Which is different than saying that because they weren't talking to David or because they didn't talk with him every day or whatever.
Yeah, because that's something Mr. Alam brought up. He said, I understand. From our side, we're far away. We're dealing with Nyla sickness. So what was y'all's excuse for not, being in each other's lives? Like, he's like, if that was me and my daughter isn't talking to me for this long, and she lives literally 10 minutes away from me, I'll pop up at her house, So, I don't know. Their family was a little odd, but I mean, I'm not going to say too much on that. I don't know them that well, so.
Yeah, sure. Can we go back to a little bit about when we're talking about Rainey in the basement? And can you give us the correct pronunciation of what the daughter's name? Yeah. Can you say the name?
Her name is Rania.
Okay, thank you. Rania.
But,
okay, so can you give us a little, because you've watched that documentary, you've seen both versions of it. The version that certain people have, kind of teased us with or tempted us with or whatever. But in that version, what is happening with Rania in the basement? Is there any...
Honestly, there was no point of them putting that on there. It was just a little tantrum. She was in timeout, and that was all there was to it. And it was funny how she was acting. And David loved, the thing with David, he documented everything. this may be TMI, but he even recorded her first poop, But that was just him, He loved recording things like in the moment. You'll see a lot of their pictures. They're not posed pictures. They're in the moment pictures. That's what he loved. So it was just something he documented, and they chose to use that, I guess.
Yeah, that seemed kind of strange. Out of all of the stuff that they had,
yeah,
that seemed kind of strange that they would use.
They were just really, trying to, prove, how David was, and make him look uglier. In my opinion.
but they put that, like, it's not just that they showed it in there; it's where they showed it. They showed that in the cult section. So we're here talking about this cult, this and that, and like, I don't know, like a lot of that stuff.
You just don't get a good feeling after you watch that.
No, because it's just more like fear. It's like, well, it raises so many different things, whereas a documentary is supposed to give you closure. It's supposed to help us understand what really happened here so that we can move on. This did not. This is not a documentary. So,
absolutely not. I completely agree with you, and that was part of the reason why Mr. Lum and Nelson were going back and forth. He said he was going to add some stuff in the end. Apparently he added the dog at the end. Apparently that was supposed to be a lesson, which I don't see how. It's just crazy to me. Honestly, I don't know how David's family agreed to this. I wish they would have taken back their interviews too, and this wouldn't have happened. But
now, is it possible that they signed the same contract that I signed, and that then they saw it later and they were like, "Wait a minute, like what the heck
because
is going on here?"
When I went with Sidra to the hotel where they were gonna shoot their interviews, they wanted them to sign it there, and Mr. Lum was not okay with that. He's like, no, I will not sign any paperwork till I see what your agenda is. So, yeah, that could very well have been what had happened. But I also do know Sidra had told me that Dan Sr. had talked to her a little bit about this, and he didn't want to go through with this. Apparently Nelson had reached out to him when all of this had happened, right away, and he shut him down. But I think the Gray State family had a lot to do with why they went through with this. That's just my personal opinion from what I saw.
I totally agree. Mm-hmm.
They pushed it. Honestly, Dan Sr., he's a very sweet man from what I have heard, him talk, the way he's talked to Sidra, he's a sweet man. Think he got manipulated into doing this. His friends basically, that's what he told Sidra was, they said this would be a tribute to his son, which I don't see how the heck this is a tribute. But, like you said, maybe he signed it off thinking that would have been a tribute. And afterwards, it wasn't what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, it was kind of the same thing that they told me. Oh, we just want to get to the truth. We think you guys are great. You guys are on to it. We just want to get your guys' side. And I'm sure, and now what I'm learning is they told everybody else the same thing. We just want to get your view.
Yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely.
But make sure you sign this document. Like the only reason they wanted me to sign that document was so that I could not sue anybody else, so that I cannot sue it. And it was just like, wait a minute. Like, so I even tweaked it, and they didn't really notice it. But it was just like I don't really care because I don't have anything, But it shows that they were not trying to make a documentary. They had ulterior motives, from what I'm saying. Absolutely. They told everybody,
different stories, and I really wish, we everybody got together before all of this.
But they were, but they were keeping us separate. They were trying to make both families think that people that were asking questions were the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's,
it just shows their motives. When Mr. Alam at the end, he told him, there's no way he was going to sign off on this documentary. And, Nelson said he respected his wishes. He would take off both Sidra and Mr. Alam's piece on that. And that was the end of it. And he said he was going to let him know when this aired. He was going to have him fly out to New York and all this stuff. But, they honestly, it's pretty crazy, but they didn't even know when it was going to get released, the documentary. I actually told Sidra, because I would regularly check up on y'all's page, and that's where I saw it at. And I told her, I was like, hey, did you know that the documentary is getting released? And she had no idea. And then she told Mr. Alam, and Mr. Alam actually flew out to New York with his lawyer. And he was present at the release, but they had no idea. They were undercover.
Right, which they shouldn't have had to be if all of this was just going to lead us to the truth, right? There was no need for any of that.
Supposedly they went through tons of stuff and went through all of his videos. And I think that's something that Dan Senior had told Sidra about. That was part of the reason why he wanted to go through with it, because he wanted someone to come in and dig information. Because that's something he has always had trouble with. He always told Sidra, he can't find the why, So I guess that's part of the reason why he went through with it. Maybe someone would be able to find the why.
Do you know who interviewed them?
So I don't know names exactly, but Nelson was there. I was there. I was sitting outside when they were getting interviewed. Nelson was there. Mason was there. Chris Peck was there. And there were two other guys that were holding the camera, and there was a skinny guy that was holding the microphone, I believe. Yeah, they wanted to interview both Sidra and Mr. Alam separately, but Mr. Alam didn't want that. He said that if they wanted an interview, it'd have to be together. So they both sat down together. So on the raw footage, they basically, if they wanted to show Sidra separately, they just zoomed it in all the way on her to make it seem like she was separate.
So how much footage is there of them? Of the alums?
They try to get Kamel's side of the view on who she was as a person. Sidra talks about that. They talk about, when they got married. Mr. Alam was opposed to that. They talk a lot about, most of it was for Sidra's side, when she went up there in October. So they touched up on that. Her interaction with David, and just basically he asked stories of Kamel, and if we knew anything about her paranormal activities, and if they had any occurrences. And Sidra had mentioned one that she had when she went up there in Minnesota when they were living in their apartment. So she brushed up on that part, so that was on the documentary as well. And they ended it showing that she was pregnant and, something good was going to come, which was so stupid, but sorry, I just really hate weird. The documentary.
No, I do too. I've only seen it once. And it was the only time that I watched it live. So I do not want to see it, but wait. So,
yeah, it's a bunch of vomit. Yeah, they actually didn't have the dog part. Then they ended it with showing Sidra's stomach and
Are you
saying,
serious?
"Okay, yeah." Well,
they showed it because
Sidra's due date was actually Rania's birthday. So they thought that was so intriguing, so they wanted to end it there by saying, oh, well, this baby's going to come on Rania's birthday kind of thing, you know?
Okay, so they're pulling at our heartstrings. Okay.
Yeah, they
Gotcha.
they even said that they were going to do it that way because it was just crazy to me. Like, it was just so stupid. Yeah. I'm glad they pulled it out because, gosh.
That seems weird. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. They wanted some kind of emotional thing to end with. That's why they chose the dog. So everybody, he even said it. When Mr. Alam said, you know, take our stuff out, he said, okay, we'll all have to take some stuff out. We'll go ahead and put the dog on there, you know, so we could have that, you know, ending to it. And, you know, everybody can feel happy, giddy, I guess. I don't know how you could feel that way, but. The weird thing about me is I get to see both sides. I agree with you guys at certain aspects, and I agree with Sidra, you know. As far as journals go, I think that should be released, but that's just me, you know. The reason why I say that is the journals have a lot of information, you know. David's were a little weird, you know. He wasn't the easiest person to read, but you know, as far as Kamel's go, you know, that's all she spoke about. So I think, like, maybe in time, Sidra would be willing to, you know, release some of the journals, but it really shows you what Kamel was going through. And I don't think she even understood what she was going through. So, yeah, I mean, it started in July when Nyla got sick. And, you know, she started writing just, I guess, her thoughts and stuff. And she talks about her dad and how frustrated she was with him and just, you know, back and forth with the family. She was just trying to understand her feelings, and I think she was just very confused because she wanted to be there for her family, but I don't know why she didn't say that on her journals, but David didn't want that. He didn't want her coming down here, and that was, you know, that was the plan. Even after she disagreed with Mr. Alam about, you know, doing chemotherapy and stuff, she was supposed to come down here for Nyla's surgery. You know, Mr. Alam was going to buy her a ticket, and, you know, even though they didn't agree on things, they were still, you know, she was still there for them. And then one of the journals that stuck out to me was overnight, she sat down with David and he convinced her that she shouldn't come here. That's not her family anymore. Ronnie and David are her priority, and, you know, let them figure it out. And it's just a pattern. Like, it's very interesting, you know, reading them and seeing how it shifts and how her, even her own emotions change. You know, she starts doubting herself. You know, she starts off strong, and you can see a pattern.
Kamel's mom, you know, is going through all of this pain, all of this suffering. Why wouldn't David want Kamel to go see her mom? That
was about control. It was more about control for him. I think ever since that time when Kamel called her dad and said she was leaving him, I think ever since then it was very, you know, it was very, I guess he was scared for that. He didn't really like for Kamel to come down here. I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but she's only came down to Texas twice. And it was the 2 times that she got the cars, and one of those was Sidra's graduation, but any other events, she never came down to Texas. Sidra was the one that would go in the summer and, you know, spend Christmas with them because she just couldn't come down here. And I think that speaks, like, a lot, too, because it just shows, you know, I mean, what daughter wouldn't want to visit their, you know, her family and her friends in Texas? And I think that speaks a lot from his side on how controlling he was on that aspect. I mean, everybody, I mean, you know, every man is different, and to a certain extent, you know, there is some control there, and that's totally fine. You know, everybody has that in their relationship, but, you know, to a point where, you know, you can't do certain things. He's making her quit her job, and he even writes that in his journal on how he planned it, and he was surprised that he was able to convince her. So, I mean, it just shows manipulation, you know, it just shows, like, how possessive he was over her. And, you know, the night of David's reunion, you know, he writes about that, how, you know, one of his old buddies from school, you know, complimented Kamel and, you know, called her beautiful and whatever. And, you know, he didn't like that. And he just writes a whole article, which was so crazy, and it shows his possessiveness. He says, she's mine, and I married her because of her beauty, and it's bizarre, you know. I don't have the journal with me right now, so I could read it, but he was very possessive. Even Ronnie, you know, he writes about her, how he came in between their marriage. And, you know, as a parent, I would never think my daughter would come in between me and my husband, you know. So, I mean, it just shows how possessive he was over Kamel. So I think that's part of the reason why, you know, she wasn't able to come down here. He was scared. He didn't want her, you know, coming down here and maybe, you know, changing her mind and wanting to stay here in Texas. I don't know what was going through his mind, but I think that had a lot to do with it.
So when you say his journal, because we've heard from different people, multiple sources, blah, 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 about different journals. When you say that he wrote this in his journal, can you clarify which journal you're talking about? Because I've heard about several journals.
So the only journals I've seen is a written journal that he had. He had 3 journals. He only wrote in one. One of them had 1 page on it that apparently he was going to, you know, keep up with, but he never did. But the one I'm speaking of was a DK and a heart on it. That was the front page of it. So I'm guessing that was David and Kamel. And
so these are
it was a written journal. Yes, these are written journals.
Okay, yeah, because we've heard about a written journal, a video journal, and then I guess this journal that came out.
I don't think there's any truth on the video journals. That is something I asked Sidra about it, and she said that it was said that there was an online journal, but she hadn't seen anything from the online journal. It was just a written one that she knew of, and that's something we both have read.
With her journal, was there anything in there too that would help us understand why the family thinks David Crowley is guilty?
She talks about a lot of you know, mental abuse and, you know, him wanting to try different types of what would you call it, like drugs. And, you know, you could tell that she was very the way she wrote her journals, it basically, she was talking to the journal as to, like, I feel like that's something she was venting. Like, she was living 2 different lives. She was agreeing with David just to keep the peace in the house. But the way she truly felt, she was writing down on her journals. And there were a lot of different instances where she also spoke about being scared of him. She wrote one time that she took Ronnie out to, she just left the house because she was so scared of David, because I think that was the time when he tried shrooms, and he was hallucinating, and what else did she say? She said, I wish I had the journals on me, but she basically just talks about how scared she is, and that's not something that Ronnie should be around. And apparently she didn't even know he was going to do, which she was really angry about. They hadn't, that caused a really big rift between their relationship, because that's not something that Kamel wanted Ronnie to see, you know.
Was David doing this by himself, or was he with friends?
No, this was by himself. And she wrote that she locked him in the room. I don't know which room she locked him in and how she did that, but she said that she was scared for him and she didn't know how to handle it. And she also wrote that she thought about calling his dad, but and she also wrote that he has alienated everybody, and I don't even know who to reach out to anymore. And, you know, just certain things she says, it just shows how alone she felt. And, you know, it shows that she didn't agree to it. You know, most of the things that were going on, it's just, you know, it's just beyond me that she was such a strong, independent girl, and she didn't think I just don't know why she just didn't leave, you know, if she felt that way, you know.
Yeah, I can relate to that, because I've dealt with a similar thing, and you do kind of wonder that, like, why don't they just leave? But obviously,
yeah. I mean, I've never been in that situation, so I mean, I wouldn't, you know. I thought about it, you know, but I've also heard that I guess you just get so into it, and you feel like you can change them, you know. So yeah. I guess that's why they stay. But
do you know who? Go ahead.
Oh no! What was that?
I was just going to say, going back to the drugs, I was just trying to, do you know who he got those from? Is there any mention of, like, who, because obviously he doesn't just, and really, to be honest, you know, I've never done shrooms or anything, but if I was going to do something like that, I wouldn't want to be by myself, and I definitely would not want to be around my wife. I'd want to be with close friends that I trusted.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was something, that was part of the reason why she was writing in her journal, because she was so that he would do that to her. You know, he would put her in that position where she wasn't even aware of this, you know. So that was part of the reason why she even wrote it in her journal. And he did mention in his journal about asking Danny Mason about shrooms, because apparently he had done them before. And Sidra had asked Danny Mason about it, and he said that David had asked him about his experience, and Danny told him, I don't think you should go that route. I didn't have a good experience with it. And honestly, he also said that, what else did she say? He said that once you get that high, you always want something, you know, more, like something more that'll give you that high. So that's not the route he should go. And Danny told her that David said that he was just tired. He wanted something more. You know, he wanted to feel something more. So, but Sidra asked him if he was the one who had given him the shrooms, and he said he had no idea about it. So I don't know if it was Chris Peck or who it was who gave him that.
Okay. But she didn't, do you know if if Kamel ever experienced with any of that? Or maybe that's not even relevant. Maybe that's...
She didn't talk about shrooms. She did talk about, you know, smoking weed. She did say that, you know, it helped her anxiety, and that is something she had told Sidra in the past too, that she did. It helped her her anxiety levels. But,
right, and she would know because she was in the medical field, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so she didn't do it that often, but, you know, whenever her anxiety level was high, that is something that she would do. And she also suggested that for her mom's pain, you know, like medical marijuana, you know, for instead of the pills that she takes for her pain.
Sure. Yeah, they're giving stepmom CBD oil, I think, for her bones or something like that, and it's definitely working.
It's very helpful. Yeah, it's actually helping with Mrs. Alam too. It helps her be a little more hungry, since she's on feeding tube or TPN. It helps her be a little more hungry and gain some weight and just not be as nauseous, and so yeah, I believe that helps.
Sure. Going back a little bit to what you said about when Kamel wanted to leave David, I'm trying to get a good timeline about when that first happened, when Kamel contacted her dad. And I know it's been mentioned, but just thinking here now, I'd like to have that so people can go back and say, okay, at this time.
Don't quote me on this.
Sure.
Don't quote me on this, but I think it was around 2012. It was summer 2012, I believe.
Okay.
Or no, actually, no.
I think it might have been later on.
No, it was actually before that. It was 2011, actually. Okay. Yeah, because when Kamel had came down for Sidra's graduation, high school graduation, that is something Sidra didn't even know about this. Mr. Alam did not tell Sidra about this conversation at all. He kept it to himself and didn't tell his wife or Sidra that Kamel had called him. He didn't. I guess that was their little secret. But Kamel had told Sidra about it, and in 2011 when she came down here, and when we were having lunch, it was brought up, and I was there too. It was a very weird lunch. That is where I saw the disconnect from Kamel.
Okay, so all three of you were kind of there?
Yeah, David was there too.
Who was there? Oh, David was there. Okay.
Yeah.
But there was something odd? You just felt something weird, or?
Kamel was a very perky person, She has a lot of energy to herself, and, I'm sure you guys can gauge that from the videos on how she is. The way she was talking and the way she would look at David for approval, that's something I've talked about before too, but that is something that struck out to me. I don't think Sidra had noticed that. I even brought it up to Sidra, and I said, Kamel's pretty different. She's talking a lot more like David, and she's like, well, they're married. You live with somebody, you start talking like them. And I was like, yeah, but, any little thing we talk about, she always looks at David. Like, is it okay? I think I had mentioned that I had arranged a little get-together for the girls in her last visit in May. I asked if she could come spend the night, just us girls have movie night and stuff, and her first instinct was to look at David and see if it was okay with him, which I don't see why it wouldn't be, She was only down here for not even 3-4 days. So, yeah, it's just different things, anything she said or things that was talked about, that she would always look at him for his reaction. Is he okay? You could tell, that was her main thing. Even with sitting with Mr. Alam, Mr. Alam, I don't know if you know, he's very, he's a character. He's a very good person, and he'll speak his mind. So just having him around David, her anxiety level was so high because she was holding David's hand, and she would just always look at him every time Mr. Alam would talk, to make sure, is he okay? It just didn't make sense. It was just a really awkward place to be in for myself.
So this has to be clear. In the first Apple Valley Police Department press release, this was released at 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on January 17, 2015, 2.5 hours after the bodies were found. And they are treating this as suspicious deaths. Saturday, January 17, 2015, at approximately 12:56 p.m., Apple Valley police officers went to the residence on Ramsdale Drive on a report of dead bodies inside the house. The initial responding officers located 3 deceased persons inside the residence. The investigation into the matter is ongoing. Agents from Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension are assisting Apple Valley Police Department detectives in the investigation. One day later, January 18th at 11:40 a.m. Central Standard Time, here is where they start accusing David. On Saturday, January 17, 2015, at approximately 12:56 p.m., Apple Valley police officers went to a residence on Ramsdale Drive on a report that a person checking on the residence saw dead bodies inside. Responding officers found the bodies of 2 adults and 1 child deceased inside the residence, the result of an apparent murder-suicide. At this time, it is believed there is no threat to public safety. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office is working to positively identify the 3 deceased. Again, not positively identified until January 21st, but we're already accusing David of the crime. They haven't even done the autopsy on David yet, and they're already accusing him of this crime. David's autopsy will begin about 10 minutes later at 11:50 a.m., January 18th. Investigation into this matter is ongoing. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and the Dakota County Sheriff's Office are assisting the Apple Valley Police Department with the investigation. So now we have the Sheriff's Office also assisting. All right, now the third press release is January 19, 2015 at 12:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now this one gets a little more in-depth, pretty much the same thing. Responding officers found the bodies of 2 adults, 1 child deceased in the residence, the result of an apparent murder-suicide. Police located a firearm at the scene and have determined the cause of death to be gunshot wounds. This is an isolated incident and the public is not in danger. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office is continuing its work to positively identify all of the deceased. No positive ID yet. Investigation into the matter is ongoing. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and the Dakota County Sheriff's Office are assisting the Apple Valley Police with the investigation. So by the 5th press release, now we got names: David Crowley, 29, Kamel Crowley, 28, Rania Crowley, 5, all dead of gunshot wounds. Investigators found a handgun next to David's body. The Hennepin County Medical Examiner determined Kamel and Rania died of a homicide, while David Crowley died of suicide. So here it is. By January 23rd, we see what the Medical Examiner's Office has determined. Now we need to understand why they determined that. That's going to be our focus here today. They also say, while this remains an ongoing investigation, updated information is being made available about the incident. The 3 bodies were found in close proximity of each other in the front room of the residence. There were no signs of intrusion or struggle. There's also no sign that they found a bullet hole right above their heads, but we'll save that for later. Investigators have determined the last verified activity from the residence happened in late December. Investigators seized several personal electronic devices and computers from the residence. The Dakota County Electronic Crime Scene Task Force is completing forensic analysis of the devices. The analysis of these devices could provide important information about this incident, said Apple Valley Police Captain John Bermel, but that analysis will take time. The investigation into this matter is ongoing. Minnesota BCA is still involved. Dakota County Sheriff's Office still involved, assisting with the Apple Valley Police Department. January 23rd, 2015 at 10 a.m. When you focus on the documents, you get some clear facts. You have clear questions, but clear facts. Sometimes those facts are just questions. They're interchangeable, apparently. All right, so let's go through this. The medical examiner examining the bodies. Okay, so the final diagnosis of the medical examiner's report stated Rania was shot in the right parietal scalp. The bullet went through her brain and exited the left side of her scalp. 3 gray-colored metal projectile fragments were found in her left temporal skull.
The trajectory was described as leftward, downward, and backward. It looks like Rania was shot from behind on the right side of her head, next to the ear. The range at which she was shot could not be determined, but there was no suit or stippling, which would have indicated murder at close range. The final autopsy report, initially dated February 6, 2015, with signatures dated March 16, 2015, stated Rania was found partially decomposed with moderate decomposition. Livor, discoloration of the skin, and rigor mortis, stiffness of death, were absent. Even so, according to the external examination, early to moderate decomposition is evidenced by skin discoloration, marbling, blistering, slippage, and partial mummification of the face, left hand, and feet. Examiners also observed evidence of post-mortem animal scavenging. The evidence was the absence of the right arm. Possibly related to animal scavenging was the jagged and tattered skin and soft tissue defect where Rania's arm would have connected to her shoulder. According to this report, the 10x8 defect exposed the glenoid fossa and the lateral right first through fourth ribs. Also observed was a fracture in the third rib and numerous short white hairs adherent to the pants. Kamel's autopsy began with Assistant Medical Examiner Mitchell Morey as the pathologist. Detectives Sean McKnight and Brian Bone observed the autopsy. Kamel was identified by dental radiographs and tattoos. Kamel weighed 85 pounds. Lividity, discoloration, and rigor, stiffness, were not recognized on her body. Body cavities contained small amounts of decomposition fluid. Kamel was shot twice with both entrance wounds in the left posterior parietal region of the skull. The trajectories of the two bullets were listed as left to right and back to front. However, in the external examination, the trajectories for both bullets are listed as left to right and front to back. Large skull fragments are also mentioned. The scalp was absent according to the report. The missing portion of Kamel's head was most likely the right side of her skull. All that remained of her head were portions of the posterior skull, specifically most of the left occipital bone and portions of the adjacent left parietal bone. No brain tissue remained in the skull. Irregular bony and soft tissue margins were consistent with canine scavenging. According to the report, most of the head and the hands are missing. Many of the bones found were consistent with fragmented digit bones. The distal aspects terminate with absence of the hands. Bone fragments, wavy dark hair, and white cotton debris were all mentioned under the internal evidence section of the report. Amongst this bony material, the report continued, are two mandibles. One shows numerous restorations. In addition, there are two fragments of bone with 2 and 4 teeth. Multiple irregular bone fragments range from 1.2 to 8 centimeters in size. Regarding animal scavenging of Kamel's neck, the forensic pathologist wrote, the anterior musculature, hyoid bone, and laryngeal cartilages are absent due to apparent animal scavenging. All that remained of the neck was the exposed and intact cervical vertebral column. There is extensive bloating, the report continued, skin and slippage, and discoloration of the body surfaces. Hair was found on Kamel's right sock and the anterior left leg. The left sleeve of Kamel's sweater was frayed. Decomposition fluid and apparent blood were both present on the sleeve. Underneath the sweater was a gray state t-shirt soaked in decomposition fluid and blood. At 11:40 a.m. January 18, 2015, the Apple Valley Police Department released their second press release. This one states David Kamel and Rania Crowley died as a result of an apparent murder-suicide. This is interesting because David's autopsy hadn't begun yet, and the Hennepin Medical Examiner's Office was still working to positively identify the 3 deceased. David's autopsy began 10 minutes later at 11:50 a.m. The pathologist was Jessica Lilinski, who was once again assisted by Mitchell Murray. Detective Sean McKnight and Detective Brian Bone were both present during the autopsy. Due to the condition of David's head, the pathologist was unable to determine the entrance, pathway, and trajectory of the gunshot wound. They did determine the bullet exited through the left parietal bone and scalp. External beveling external cone shape, and radiating linear fractures were visible on the left parietal bone. The posterior calvarium and overlying scalp were visible, as was posterior neck skin, soft tissue, and the cervical spine. The scalp had patchy, short brown hair. Skull bone fragments ranging from 1.5 to 14.5 centimeters are mentioned in the internal evidence section of this report. The skull bone fragments articulate well with each other and with the remaining calvarium of David's head. Separately, a non-articulating 8.5 centimeter maximum dimension skull bone fragment has a rounded defect along with one edge with apparent internal beveling. The bony skeleton, the report continued, apart from previously described skull injuries and artifact due to animal scavenging, is intact and normal. The gunshot wound was 2 by 1 centimeters and was a regular edge. The bullet was not recovered at that time. They would not find that bullet until a month later, only because they were notified about it. Examined separately from David's body at the time of the autopsy was a maxilla with well-preserved teeth. The report also claimed Palaio was responsible for the absence of David's brain, the majority of his skull, neck skin, neck soft tissue, neck muscles, the hyoid bone, thyroid cartilage, the tongue, the larynx, the trachea, and the thyroid. The remaining bone fragments are irregular and of unidentifiable origin or consistent with phalanges. Regarding the missing right hand, the distal right forearm shows intact, smooth ends of the radius and ulna and irregularly contoured soft tissue, muscle, and skin. The left hand was mummified. In one crime scene image, the index finger of the left hand is pressing against the thumb. According to David's autopsy, dried drips of red blood. According to David's autopsy, dried drips of red-brown, blood-like material are on the dorsal left hand between the thumb and first finger. Additionally, early to moderate decomposition is evidenced by skin discoloration, marbling, slippage, blistering, and mummification of the left hand and feet. David weighed 128 pounds and was identified by dental records and body tattoos. Medication and food were not found in his stomach. Now, I also wanted to take a few minutes to thank all of the many researchers out there, all of the people who have been helping us on the sidelines, out in public, in their spare time, praying for us, wishing us well thoughts, encouraging us. I thank all of these people who are seriously trying to get to the truth, regardless of your view, regardless of what you think happened, regardless of what you think about the people who are researching it. The main thing here that everyone needs to understand, and a lot of people do understand it, and a lot of people still act like they don't, but they do. There is no evidence that will conclusively prove that David Crowley is guilty. There was no reason to close this case and claim that David Crowley was guilty. In this country, you are innocent until proven guilty. David Crowley was never proven guilty. How did we get here? In the beginning, you had many, many people telling us there's nothing to see here. Pay no attention to the man behind that curtain. It doesn't exist. It's not there. Life is good. Enjoy your family. Enjoy life. Forget about this case. La la la. It's an illusion. It's gone. Puff puff pass, right? and it's gone within the blink of an eye. Real life doesn't work like that. And a case like this cannot work like that. When a child is involved, you have to take this seriously. When two young people are involved, these people were under 30 years old. These are babies. These are what I would call babies. They're very young people who were doing a lot of interesting things. These were bright people. These were not mentally ill people. These were people who had a lot of things going for them and might have had a lot of targets on their back. Those targets will be exposed, whatever it is. We are dealing with multiple things now. It's not just about who did this. It's not just about why they did this. Mr. Alam told Sidra's friend the one thing he doesn't understand is the why. We spoke with Russell. Russell says what we need to understand is the how. I want to understand it all. I can't have one without the other. Gotta have it all. Gotta have the full picture here. Now, regardless of what we might think about the Apple Valley Police and the mistakes that they made, and there were many mistakes, it's not all of them who made the mistakes. Unless we're talking about the bullet hole in the living room ceiling. They all made that one. Nobody saw it. That's clear. If there was a photo of it, or if they noticed it in the corner of one photo that they took on January 17th when they found the bodies, if there is a photo that shows that there was a bullet hole in that ceiling, that's even worse, right? But at least it was there. So a few steps are being taken right now to get that answer, to get that photo. Because the police are telling us the photo is there. If we don't ask for it, if we don't request it, if we don't demand it, if we hit stone walls, if we hit brick walls, if we don't demand that we see it, and we shouldn't have to, by the way, but if we don't, we're never going to get the answer. We're never going to get that clear answer. And it's going to be in limbo. And we can't have that with this case. There's already too many things that we're never going to know. We know that. But they never talk about the things that we are going to know, and the things that we do know right now. And the most important thing, the one thing that counts, what proves David Crowley guilty? They can't answer the question. The answer is not a logical answer. It is a logical thing to ask the question. If you do not get a logical answer, what do? You keep searching, you keep digging. And I am encouraging everyone, keep searching, keep digging. What's different about this is we're doing a lot of this stuff public. Some might say that might hurt what we're doing. It might hurt the end result. I disagree. I think that's how confident we are in this, knowing that there is no proof that shows David Crowley is guilty. I'll give them everything. I'll let them know exactly what I'm doing. It's not just about who gets to know the truth. Who decides that? Who decides who gets to know what really happened and who doesn't? Who gets to tell us when to stop looking, when to shut up? Who has the right to stand in my way looking at this case? You don't. In this country, you are innocent until proven guilty. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you did. To me, you are innocent till proven guilty, or until you confess. We don't have a confession here. We don't have a suicide note. We don't have any indication that there was a suicide note, even though early media reports led us to believe that there was, and there wasn't. On and on and on. The narrative is slowly fading away. It's slowly going back into the darkness where it belongs, because the darkness is not truth. This official story just does not stand up. And we'll get there. Thank you for listening. Until next time.
Hello, this is Dan Hennon along with Greg, Catherine, and Sophia. Today is April 22nd, and we've got an update for the Crowley case relating to the phone records. Now, the phone records we've gotten via a FOIA request in the past, and that has all helped, and that's been very interesting. But the new thing that has come to light is when looking at David Crowley's personal account that he had, his cell phone account. And we need to remember that Anjum Alam had been paying for David Crowley's phone number, but in October of 2014, due to some rift, Anjum Alam canceled the number, so David went out and got his own, created a brand new account. And so what we've got here, what Catherine and Sophia have discovered along with Greg's help, is the fact that after the bodies were discovered, is that the warrants were issued, the search warrants to go into the cell phone, AT&T cell phone records for David Crowley. And at that point, his account was in a suspend mode, suspended because of the bodies were dead. Now, recently, we have activity on that account that it was never shut down or never closed. And what we've got on the screenshot here is that as of this day, I mean, we're talking April of 2019, that David Crowley's account is still active. That cell phone account is still active. I don't know what cell phone number, for instance, or what 10-digit cell phone number is being used, because I do believe, Sophia, you can help me out, but they can recycle the numbers if they're not used for a while. They can reissue them to someone else. But the account number itself would not be something that would be recycled. And in fact, when we pull it up, it still shows that David Crowley's name is on that account, and it's currently being paid on a monthly basis. So,
yes,
what can you say about that, Sophia?
Well, when I went in and talked with one of the reps, he told me that the phone number had been recycled, but the account number was still active. Now, on the 18th, which was Thursday, the account had been suspended on March 21st, 2019. And it was suspended for non-payment. But when I went back to a different store on April 19th on Friday, the account had been paid and it was active again. And he pulled up a screen where it showed payments all the way for the past year, back to March 2018. That was as far back as he could go in the store. And I mean, it's kind of important to find out why his account is still active and who has two phone lines on that account. Why do they still have them? Who is making the payment? And I mean, it's still active because as of the 19th, it was still active.
Yeah, because that's a lot of money to put into an account, you know, $184 every month for 4 years. Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
Absolutely. It adds up.
Mm-hmm.
And needless to say, I was kind of shocked when I came across that information. I was not expecting that answer. I had gone in because of codes that we were researching. All four of us were researching, and just questions in regards to those codes, and come to find out that the account was still active and being used. That was just a little shocking, to say the least.
Yeah, when you called and told me that, it's like I sent Dan an email right away, and I'm like, we need to talk. It's like, what's going on here? Okay, this is not right. Something's off with this.
And that's and you mentioned $184 per month. If that was active this whole time, 4 years, that's 48 months. That total is $8,832 that someone is using, unless it's just a random person that created an account called David Crowley. I don't buy that. But
no.
And like I said, it's not going to be recycled. Do you think that account went dormant for some time after the killings and then someone just reactivated? But if they did, why would they use the name David Crowley?
Well, and again, like you said, Dan, it is the same exact account number. So they're not going to recycle an account.
Yeah, the old phone number pulled up with his name, but that account number is absolutely the same. It wouldn't change. It wouldn't be recycled, but it's all there.
And when I've been searching the phone numbers, the 4890 comes up, and it even on anybody can do a Google search on that and pops up as David Crowley. And then when I pull up Kamel's phone number with the 0072, it says nothing can be found. So I found that interesting.
Yeah, and it shows if you look onto even the subscriber financial liability for AT&T, and it does show the date here, customer since 10/21/2014. This is when David Crowley called AT&T and set up his own account to get his own cell phone number after Mr. Alam canceled his. And so at the end of October, less than 2 months, roughly 2 months around allegedly the deaths, he did get his brand new account set up, assigned a new account number, and was paying the bills and everything else. And then after the bodies are found, you would think that account would go dormant, and as part of the, I don't know if you'd call it, as part of the estate, for instance, would be shut down. Who's ever handling the account, the estate would be shutting down these accounts. And it does look like a couple months ago, whoever was doing it had forgotten to pay a month or two. And I think sometimes it takes maybe 3 months for it to actually get suspended or shut off. And so someone skipped a couple months, and now they've paid it again. So it is actually, this is what we're talking about is a current cell phone account with two, Sophia, was it two lines connected to this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that would be, if we're talking, $90 an account, two accounts, $180 bill every single month, that's $8,000. Who's paying that bill? Who's using it? And why in God's name is David Crowley's name on that account?
Yeah, and Sophia, didn't you find the account was actually in something called David T. Crowley, LLC?
That's what the gentleman at the store told me. And I don't see it on the screen, the shots that I was able to get, the two photos. I don't have the actual page that shows that, though.
But I mean, that's okay because, you had verbal proof, or someone verbally spoke to you and said that this account is registered under a David Crowley LLC.
Yes.
Not a Dan, not anything like that, but David, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it had David's name, and it still has David's name with the LLC after it.
And one thing to note here for this episode, we know that Mr. Alam also gave the cars to Kamel, and then David got one or Kamel, and they ended up changing the ownership. So at the time of death, I think both of those cars were still in Kamel's name officially, with titles in the state of Minnesota, and that one car then stayed, I guess, allegedly with Dan Crowley Sr. So he went through the effort to change the title and the insurance over to his own name there with that one car. But some may assume that this is, Dan Sr. may have taken over this account, or Dan Jr., David's brother or his father. But you would think the first thing you'd want to do is either shut the account down altogether, because those two individuals already had their own cell phone service and cell phone accounts. They wouldn't have a need to be piggybacking off David's, but even if you did keep it, I would guess that you'd want the name changed off of David's, but...
Yeah, I mean, because legally, I'm not sure they can actually keep an account open in someone else's name. I mean, that then becomes, a tax liability. And so, it's crazy.
Get the lines, to be able to do any type of work on that account, whether it's to get a different phone or to call in with concerns, you need a passcode. You cannot get anywhere, whether on the phone or if you go into the store. They look up the account. They can give you information in regards to who has that account, but that's it. You can't go any further. So if I
And
was
is
to go
there
in and say, I would like to pay this bill, I don't have a passcode.
is
You
there a
have to have
mailing
that.
address on that
No.
account? Did they show you a mailing address?
Mm-mm.
So
No.
they're probably getting
He couldn't get into it.
paperless bills, so it must be going to a email address. The monthly bill.
Yeah, and it's right there. It's like it's David is financially responsible, but the contact email is Kamel.
Well, it's certainly an interesting thing, and I'm glad we're getting this out there because, like once we said again, that it doesn't matter what the phone number is; it's the account has been active since David set it up in October of 2014. It's gone through a couple of times. It seems that it has been suspended, but the account is still there, and it's currently, as of today, in an active status, generating a monthly bill that someone is paying. And so that's the question, I think. And once we get this video out there, if anyone in this background or in this industry could, comment below, because I can't think of a situation where you'd still be wanting to use that phone or use that line or that account, I should say.
Yep, I agree.
Greg, what do you
also.
do? You have any thoughts, Greg, on why an account would be in the name of David Crowley? Under the business name David Crowley LLC?
No, it doesn't make sense. No.
Yeah. And it would be interesting to see who's actually paying that bill. So if you know of anything, please leave your comment below because that's an expensive bill with two lines beneath it. And wow, I don't know, but hopefully we'll trigger something that someone could comment below.
And just so everybody knows, Sophia and I are going through the phone records with a fine-tooth comb, and we will have some extremely interesting information for you regarding that as well in the near future.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to get out because those phone records came out, and some of those files, those PDF files, are quite large. And we've been putting together some of these spreadsheets and finding some very interesting things. So that'll be coming out once that gets wrapped up. But we wanted to get this information out there right away with this account number because this is odd because this is an ongoing account that is live, active, and being paid for by someone to this day on a monthly basis.
Yeah, a dead family's cell phone account is open 4 years later and, still active and still being paid. There's something wrong there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That was not the response I was expecting to get when I went in.
No.
At all.
I mean, and this has been turned off. So it was turned off at least by 2/18/2015, according to this file right here. And then all of a sudden the bill is paid, and I mean look at where the bill is paid to. This is where they're billing it. You would have to live here in order to change that billing address. I don't understand.
You would have to have his personal information to be able to get that account started back up again. So if it's David, who is doing it? Is it fraud? You have to ask that question. This person is dead. His account is active. What's going on?
This account I don't see any reason why this account should be active at all.
Yeah, and those for watching on the screen there, it's an account that ends in a 247. That is the actual account number at AT&T. And the owner of that account is David Crowley. So I would agree with Sophia this seems to be something fraudulent in some sort. Very strange would be the low end of things. It could be fraudulent.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yes, it was not the answer I was expecting. It was not the response, that it was still active. You can imagine my shock. Poor guy. But, yeah.
All right. Well, that's all
this is something that needs to be looked in.
That's all that I had. Did you have anything else, Catherine, to mention, or Greg, or Sophia?
No.
No, I just want to reiterate what you have already stated and hope everyone understands the point we are making is that the account of a dead family is active and still being paid. Who's doing it? Is it fraud? Is it the family who's kept it open but has decided, which I don't see how they legally do it, but it's something to seriously think about. This family died 4 years later. Their accounts are still being paid, and it is still open, which should not be. So, like Dan said, if anyone out there has any good explanation for this, please let us know.
Very good.
Thank you, Catherine.
All right. So please leave your comments below with any suggestions, and we'll get this posted out there on YouTube, and feel free to share it. Thank you for listening. Hello, my name is Dan Hennon. We are doing a Crowley case update conference call tonight. Today is April 26th, 2019. And we've got a bunch of topics, a bunch of things to discuss and go over. We've got the chat lines open, and we've got Catherine Michelle on the line, Greg Fernandez Jr., and several others. We'll go around and get some introductions out of the way, but we've got 3 hours here set aside to get ourselves up to date here with the recent things. Catherine, welcome.
Thanks, Dan.
And we got Greg. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. It's another beautiful day in the Bay.
Perfect. And you can see the others that are online. Do we have any other ones that we want to mention, or should we just go forward with anonymous questions?
We do have 2 other names. If they're okay with that, I'll wait. If they don't mind, us saying their names. Otherwise, maybe they don't want to be introduced. I don't know.
Well, whatever works, we can get the ball rolling. Like I said, Greg, you've got a 3 hours window set up for this freeconferencecall.com, and
that's right.
It's a good Friday evening to feel free to call in and get on the chat or raise questions or comment on various things.
Suspicious activity. On January 19, 2015, a neighbor called police and reported suspicious activity at the Crowley residence. The caller refused to give a name, but claimed to live a few houses down from 1051 Ramsdale Drive. 2 days earlier, the bodies of David Kamel and Rania Crowley were found in the living room of their house. 15 minutes prior to the call to authorities, a GMC Blazer truck with army paint stopped in front.
They're gonna put me in the movies. They're gonna make a big star out of me. We'll make a film about a man that's sad and lonely, and all I gotta do is act naturally. Well, I'll bet you I'm gonna be a big star. Might win an Oscar, you can't never tell. The movie's gonna make me a big star, 'cause I can play the part so well. Well, I hope you come to see me in the movie. Then I know that you'll plainly see the biggest fool that's ever hit the big time, and all I gotta do is act naturally. We'll make the scene about a man that's sad and lonely, and begging down upon his bended knee. I'll play the part, but I won't need rehearsing. All I'll have to do is act naturally. Well, I'll bet you I'm gonna be a big star. Might win an Oscar, you can't never tell. The movie's gonna make me a big star, 'cause I can play the part so well. in the movie. But then I know that you will plainly see the biggest fools ever hit the big time, and all I gotta do is act naturally.
On October 26, 2017, Dan Hennon interviewed Mike Boggio III, president of Michael Entertainment Group, MEG. During the interview, Mr. Boggio discussed how he met David Crowley, the alleged $30 million deal, and when negotiations with the Gray State Project ended. You ready for this? Hello, Hollywood. Mike Boggio III met David Crowley through a mutual friend. The mutual friend connected us together, so we set up a meeting with David in California. I talked to David numerous times on the telephone prior to our first meeting, so that's how we got together. In May of 2014, David Crowley met with the Michael Entertainment Group in Los Angeles, California. It was a very promising project, Boggio told Hennon. David wrote the first go-around of the screenplay. We went through it thoroughly, made numerous changes, and advised David to make numerous changes. At first, we were taking it to the big screen, Boggio continued. And then, as we thought about it, we figured, how can we pack in all this information in a 2-hour or 2.5-hour film? Let's take it to television and have a series made out of it, which would have been a lot better for the concept of David's idea. Without specifically naming names, Mr. Boggio commented on the actors considered for the Gray State Project. We were talking about hiring some pretty substantial A-list actors to fulfill some of the roles in the project. 2 months earlier, on March 8, 2014, David had stated that Sean Stone wanted a role in the future project. Quote, Sean Stone, yeah, that one, apparently wants a role in Gray State. Mike Boggio thought that David's version of Gray State would be a great A&E show. It'd be a great cable network television show that could spin off into a film. A&E is also where Eric Nelson's documentary was eventually released. David was always very mature, Boggio told Hennon, very professional, very kind and courteous and outgoing and excited. That's the key word. Mike called David's excitement about the project phenomenal. The original setting for the Gray State movie was in the Midwest Minnesota area, but MEG felt the movie setting needed to be nationwide, coast to coast, north to south. The $30 million deal. We were negotiating with David at the time, Mike Boggio told Dan Hennon. We were talking about budgets for the film. We were talking about getting into production. Like I said, we had a list of A-list actors that I'm not going to even mention in this interview, and we talked about a $25 to $30 million budget. We could easily see the budget in this film being a $25 to $30 million budget. On May 23, 2014, David Crowley posted an update about the deal with Michael Entertainment Group. Quote, it just happened. I'm not sure how many details I can divulge at this point, but Gray State will be optioned within the next 2 weeks at a major budget and connected with A-list talent. We are connected with a producer who, above all else, wants to preserve the film's pro-liberty ideals. This is all we could have hoped for and more. Thank you all for being our strongest selling point. Let's make a movie. So there were negotiations, Boggio explained. We were actually trying to option a screenplay. When we option a screenplay, we option a screenplay for a certain amount of time. I think we were going for 24 months, if I remember right. And within that 24 months, we had to get into production with the film. Otherwise, the option goes back to David. So that's what our negotiations were with David at the time. Mr. Boggio then clarified, when we talk about $25 to $30 million, that's what we budgeted for the film project. That's what we budgeted for everything to do from start to finish. As far as MEG's last conversation with David went, according to Mike Boggio, it was sometime in September of 2014, and those negotiations continued until David died. We actually met face-to-face in Hollywood, Boggio relayed to Hennon, sat down right on Sunset Boulevard. Sometime in that time frame with David. David was out in California, flew out for the night, just to come to sit down with us to discuss the updates on the screenplay and discuss the concept and everything else. So that's when we sat down and he actually made a new trailer. We're sitting in there watching the trailer and then we discuss, hey, let's think about taking this to television. And we gave him the reason why. You get picked up by a network, and it was just off the heels of Sons of Anarchy leaving that network. So we figured this could be a good spin-off for the network that Sons of Anarchy was on. And it would pick up a demographic of Sons of Anarchy. So we talked to him about numbers and statistics and discussed, if we take this to a series, then not only do you have a series, it can play out longer, then at the end of the series it can go to the big screen. And he was excited about it. He was open-minded about it and thought it was a great idea. So I don't know where the whole depression comes into play when it comes to regards to making Gray State Network. In the beginning of David Crowley's connection to MEG, we put out an offer to David to option the contract, said Boggio, which would have given him some money up front, and then we would have went and ran with the film project or the television project. David would have been a producer on the film. So he would have been paid to be a producer on the film. And then he would have reaped some of the benefits of whatever the film grossed. We all would have. David had an idea, and it was a very, very, very strong idea, and that's why we all got together. Asked about the allegations that David walked away from the project, or if MEG decided not to go forward with the project, Mike Boggio seemed to deny both allegations. We didn't fire David, or we didn't get rid of David, however that went, and he didn't walk away from us. I mean, there was never any of that. And I don't even know where those two ideas came from. Nothing to my knowledge. Again, we never told David to get lost. I tried contacting David after our September meeting or discussion. I tried contacting David for months to discuss things. I didn't hear from him or anything. So I was getting a little nervous myself. Not nervous for our business transactions. David and I became friends. Not only were we business acquaintances, but we became friends. I called him on the holidays and wished him a happy Thanksgiving to him and his family. I did that numerous times until I heard the very strange, disturbing news. So when Mike received news of David's death, he was in total shock. I didn't believe it. So Christmas comes, Boggio continued. December 2014, I guess it is, comes around. I called David on Christmas, around Christmas time, to wish him and Kamel and the baby happy holidays. I went out of town for New Year's. When I got back, I called him to wish him a happy New Year, and then I still didn't hear anything. So I felt it was kind of weird. So I contacted a mutual friend that David and I both had and asked this person. Let me take a step backward. Prior to that, I called this person saying, man, I haven't heard from David in at least a month. Have you heard from him? He's like, nah, but it's the holidays. You guys got him in the studio writing. When he gets into that writing mode, he shuts down and he secludes himself and he just focuses on what he has to do. I'll run by and see him and see the family and see how things are going. And I'm like, all right, cool. So like another month goes by, and then after New Year's, after I left David a Happy New Year's message on his voicemail, I called this person and said, man, I still haven't heard from him. Did you go over there for the holidays? The mutual friend had not gone to David's house yet. And then like the next day, the guy calls me and says, did you hear? And when he told me, I was in total shock. Owning the Gray State franchise. Who owns the rights? Who owns them now? If the deal with MEG was only with David, where did Danny Mason fit in? I have no idea what David and Danny's deals were, said Boggio. I can't answer to that. We had nothing behind that. We didn't have anything to do with that whatsoever. We didn't advise David to do that, so I don't even know why. I know that was brought up when we were doing our interview with Eric Nelson, but other than that, I have no idea why David did that, to be honest with you. Dan Hinton then asked if the script still had value. Well, when all this transpired, Boggio answered, we backed away. We backed away because of all the conspiracy theories and everywhere else. For a long time, for at least over a year, we didn't even discuss it. We just figured it was too toxic to even be involved with. Whoever got involved, I know since then they've made something. I know there were a couple guys out there that contacted me saying, hey man, we made this thing, we want you to see it, what's your thoughts? We never even got involved. Then we had a conversation at least a year, if not a little longer than a year after David's death, with David's dad, and I think it was Danny Mason. I think it was. I can't remember for sure, but we had a conversation with him about picking this thing back up and running with it because as far as I remember, David's dad got the rights to the film, or got the rights to David's estate. So he wanted to do something with it. We started talking with David's dad and then nothing ever transpired out of it. 4 months after the bodies were found, Dan informed Mike Boggio III, Danny Mason was already in process of getting the gray state trademarked with an attorney. At the end of the interview, Mike Boggio made his view very clear. We always had a pleasant experience with David. We never saw any downside to David whatsoever. Very, very motivated young man. It was actually a pleasure working with David. He took all of our ideas and all of our thoughts and took them to heart and never balked about it whatsoever to us. If he did something on his own time or around someone else, we were never privy to that whatsoever. Please consider watching the full interview with Mike Boggio III posted here.
All right, that sounds good. Hello, my name is Dan Hennon. Today is October 26th, 2017, and I'm going to be interviewing Michael Boggio III, president at Michael Entertainment Group, MEG. Hello, Michael.
How are you today?
Good. Very good this morning. Glad to be able to get on the line and speak with you. You've got some important, I think, pieces of the puzzle that relate to this entire David Crowley case that has gotten very strange over the last couple of years. Not only the alleged murder-suicide, but the aftermath and everything else here that went along with it. But more importantly, Eric Nelson has made a documentary called A Gray State, and I would like to get your honest thoughts on the movie, on the documentary, and first and foremost, have you seen it?
I have not seen it yet.
Okay. And just for the listeners out there, the movie's is not out in theaters. It's not public yet. It has made its rounds through a series of film festivals and whatnot, and private screenings. But so you have not seen it, and now are you in the film?
We are. Yeah, my partner and myself are.
Okay.
We did an interview with Eric Nelson out in California at least a year and a half ago. So it's been quite a while.
Oh, I see. So 2015, roughly.
Yeah, I think it was July of 2015.
Okay. Yeah, they came out. They interviewed us, myself, in Minneapolis here, and that was June of 2016. So
I was going to say it's 2016. We did.
Oh, okay.
July of 2016. Yeah.
Okay, good. So they made their rounds and they did that. How was that? How was that process, and what type of questions did they come up with?
They just asked us questions about our affiliation with the project and how we got involved with David and where it led to, and how long we knew David, how many meetings did we have with David, and pretty much what transpired during our relationship with David is what was discussed in the interview.
Okay, good. And also for the listeners out there, Michael Entertainment Group, or MEG, was founded in 2013. So along with Michael O'Donnell was the other. David Crowley referred to you as the Mikes, and so that was. So you're roughly a fairly new company at the time, because you were in talks with David in the time frame of, I believe it was May through September of 2014. So this was a 1-year-old company at the time. Is that correct?
Well, between Mike and myself, we've been in the industry for a long time, and we decided to partner up together and start our own company. So that's how that transpired. So it's not like, we are a new startup company at the time, but we were both in the industry for many, many, many years.
Oh, very good. And then how did and so that interview was good. You felt that was good. You haven't seen obviously the final product, but
not yet. No.
Okay. How did David Crowley and the Gray State Project come into communication? How did you guys connect? Did you reach out to him, or did he reach out to you fellas?
We have a mutual friend, and the mutual friend connected us together. So we set up a meeting with David in California. I talked to David numerous times on the telephone prior to our first meeting. So that's how we got together.
Oh, perfect. And then it got to a point where David flew out there along with Kamel and met with you guys in May of 2014. And Mike O'Donnell wrote in I think it was the Dystopia article from Alec Wilkinson that he said, quote, "It was a roadmap for the next American Revolution." And then you had, your quote was, "This was our most promising project." Can you elaborate a little more on those two quotes?
Well, I can't speak for Mike O'Donnell, but I can speak for myself. I mean, it was a very promising project. David wrote the first go-around of the screenplay. We went through it thoroughly, made numerous changes, advised David to make numerous changes. And so it was a very promising project. At first we were taking it to the big screen, and then as we thought about it, we figured, how can we pack in all this information in a 2-hour or 2.5-hour film? Let's take it to television. Let's take it network and have a series made out of it, which would have been, a lot better for the concept of the idea of David's idea. So it was very promising. We were talking about hiring some pretty substantial A-list actors to fulfill some of the roles in the project. So, with the whole concept of David's idea and the idea of the show, and we just figured it was going to be a great film, or even a series on TV.
Yeah, that's what he was mentioning. It could have been a web series or a television.
We weren't going to take it to web series. Web series that's kind of a different market.
Okay.
It depends on what you're considering web series, right? Netflix or something like that. Then yeah, we could take it to that. But web series normally is an 8 to 10 minute television show. That's it.
Yeah, there was another thing to clarify for some of those following the cases. In looking at the interview with that Mitch Heil came out with recently, and after he dropped off the project at the time, and he was more, and I think some of the other Gray State members were looking to get this movie done and focusing on a one-effort movie to focus on, whereas David Crowley was looking at this project more as a franchise, more of different outgrowths from it, and have it long-term deal with the documentary, the movie, the series, potentially. Everything. It was the whole thing, and I think that's what kind of turned off Mitch Heil at that point, because he was like, let's just do this one thing and let's get it done. And David wanted to have this thing with many legs and kind of a lot of going in a lot of directions, and I think people were kind of potentially, and I'm not putting words in the mouth, were put off by that, because it almost was like David couldn't focus on what he wanted to get done first. Did you get that gist, I guess?
I never got that impression from David at all. He's always, every time we've talked, every time we set up meetings, he was always very focused and geared towards, getting the production of this film going, or the television show going. Our ideas, Michael and myself, our ideas were, how do you pack the concept of this idea into a 2-hour film? It's virtually impossible. It would be so chopped up and so cut up. It could be done, obviously, right? They do it all the time in Hollywood. It could be done. However, we were looking at it from the long haul, that, hey, this would be a great A&E show. It would be a great whatever, cable network television show that could eventually spin off into a film.
Correct. Okay.
David's ideas, he had so many different ideas and so many different angles that this thing could have lasted on cable network.
Very good. So he was very professional, very business professional, and very mature for his age. For a young guy coming out doing all of this, did you find him to be very mature, or a loose cannon that didn't have his head in the right spot, and like that?
We never saw David as a loose cannon. David was always very mature, very professional, very kind and courteous, and outgoing and excited. That's the key word for me. That question is excited. The excitement with him was, with regards to the project, was phenomenal. I mean, how he was in his personal life, I have no idea, because we never got to that point, right?
Yeah.
I talked to David numerous times on the telephone in between our meetings over that period of time, and he was always very, very professional and like I said, very excited. You know, when we sat down the first time after Mike and myself ran through the screenplay thoroughly, and gave him suggestions. For example, like the first go around of the screenplay was very centralized, and he had it centrally located, basically, if you will, in his territory, okay, in the Midwest. And we're like, well, no, because if this is the concept of what your movie or what the movie's got to be, then you got to be nationwide, right? You got to be coast to coast, north to south. So he went back to work in the studio and started, implementing some changes with regards to some of our suggestions and discussions that we had with him.
So this was, I've got here my notes say that was May of 2014 that you first met. And then in September, David said that he wrote for 31 straight hours and then mailed the new script to LA, so it would arrive on September 17th, the same day as Mike O'Donnell's birthday. And he also included a Gray State poster in with the package because he spent a lot of time, like you said, with those suggestions, and then repackaging that and sending it out. And it alludes to me that he was very proud of this next package. He had his wife read through it, and they mailed it off. And how was that received from you and the other Mike?
I'm trying to remember that. Now, I know, like, for my birthday, he sent me same thing. He sent me some Gray State merchandise, and he sent me a poster, and he signed it. I actually have a studio at my house, and it's actually hanging on the wall in my studio at my home. I think he had a couple different versions of the screenplay. I know the last version that I got from him, he put it in a 3-ring binder with a cover and wrote a nice little note to me on the front page of it and thanking us. And I mean, I still have that screenplay as well. So there was a few versions out there, but the last one we got, again, we were talking to him, and that's when we changed gears and decided that, hey, maybe this should go to television, this should go to cable network, because there's so much information we can pack into this thing that it would be better because it would get a longer run. So, and David was excited about that. Yeah.
Now, are you familiar with the quote from Jordan Page that came out saying that David and Gray State was in the middle of a $30 million deal from a company in Hollywood? Is that partially true? Is that half true? Is that Jordan Page was the musician in the?
Yeah, I know who Jordan is.
Okay, so he came out and said that, and he was criticized roundly for that. But I think a lot of people came back and says, you know what? I think he's got some of that right and partially right. He obviously wasn't lying, but it may have been just construed because his quote on Facebook said the film was about to start production with a $30 million budget from a major Hollywood studio. So I've got multiple questions on that, but could you talk to that a little bit first? This is kind of ties into my first question for you, that you were kind of a startup, one-year-old company. Was it your firm that he was talking to as far as a major Hollywood studio, or is that another company?
I can't speak for Dave. I mean, I can't speak for that. I don't know if he was in talks with anybody else or not. But I'm going to tell you, we were in talks. I mean, we were negotiating with David at the time. We were talking about budgets for the film. We were talking about getting into production. Like I said, we had a list of A-list actors that I'm not going to even mention in this interview.
Correct.
We had a list of A-list actors that were potential for the movie, and we talked about a $25 to $30 million budget. We could easily see the budget of this film being a $25 to $30 million budget. So, and at the time all this was going down, we were negotiating back and forth with David and his lawyer. So, there were negotiations. We were actually trying to option the screenplay. And when we optioned the screenplay, we optioned the screenplay for a certain amount of time. I think
Yep.
Otherwise, the option goes back to David. So that's what our negotiations were with David at the time.
Yeah, that was good. I think another quote that I saw on the internet that someone did say that the project was, quote, greenlit, and they were working out the smaller details.
That's what we were doing. We were working out the smaller details.
Okay, so, and I got chastised pretty heavily on social media for saying that there was a deal, not a signed contract with signatures deal, but I'm an accountant by trade, and I've been in business my whole life. And so I think what it's safe to say is you probably had an agreement in principle and an oral agreement on a potential deal, but there was no contract that was signed. And I drew a lot of flack from that and I agree that there was no contract signed. But you guys were going down that path with an agreement of some sort, right?
Correct.
Gotcha.
That's correct. As far as I know, we were the go-to guys for David. I mean, the discussions that we've had, within detail, the discussions we had, the conversations we had, the ideas that we had, and just from talking to David, like, I want you guys, but we were out looking for funding. We were doing all kinds of things as we were going through the whole contract process with David and his lawyer.
Yeah,
so,
and I agree that. Okay, go ahead.
All that was being done simultaneously.
Yep, and I think that, and David's lawyer, by the way, was Adam Gislason, and and he was no longer at the company that he's had. He had since switched. I've reached out to him to get another interview as far as talking with David's, state of mind and things like that. But that is correct. It was Gislason that was working with David in the Gray State. And the other question that I think that you can help clear up is when you're talking a $30 million budget, that is to me from a business standpoint is how much a project would cost. People are taking that David signed a $30 million deal, therefore he was sitting on a check written to himself for $30 million and he was rich. That is not and never would be the case. He would have gotten installment payments, correct, if this deal would have gone down to himself, or installments of some sort of a deal. But he was never at any time sitting on $25 to $30 million in his bank account ever, right?
Never.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's what. And when we talk about $25 to $30 million, that's what we budgeted for the film project. That's what we budgeted for everything to do from start to finish with the film project. So yeah, it was never, here, David, here's $25 or $30 million check, let's get moving on the project. That's never the case.
Yeah, and that's important to point out. I think it's an important point because the film, if it gone out to the big screens, could have grossed 60, 70, 80, 90 million, but the cost or the expense of making and producing the film was what your number of 25 to 30 was really at, and that was the expense to hire and produce and to get the actors and actually make. That would have been out-of-pocket expenses for the company. Okay, very good. Very good. Well, that really helps clear the air on some of that, because at the same time there was concern that David was depressed, didn't have money, bankrupt, and at the same time people were talking that know that he was rich, but he did spend many years making this, and he didn't have a full-time job per se, so those statements are also correct to some extent. And now, I think you're correct that he wasn't working with any other companies. I think that he was focused on you guys and taking the changes and the suggestions that you offered to write his subsequent. It sounds like there was potentially up to 6 different versions of the script. So I think it's safe to say he wasn't working with anyone else. But that's just my opinion.
I agree with that. I agree with that. The conversations we had, and he never let on to work with anybody else. It doesn't mean he wasn't talking to anybody else. Just from my opinion and my thoughts here, that it's just like we were the go-to guys.
Yeah, and then on September 26th, David receives a response from Michael Entertainment Group saying that his script would be better suited for a TV series, and this was after it looks like Mike O'Donnell ran the cost of the project. And that's where he came up and said, basically, it's better suited for a TV series. And that's the last we really hear from communication from you three folks. And people think or there's conjecture that this got David down, this got David depressed, and ultimately in the time frame where he started isolating himself and his family. How do you think that his response was to that TV series?
Well, we actually met face to face in Hollywood, sat down. I don't remember the name of the establishment we were at, but it was right on Sunset Boulevard. Sometime in that time frame with David. David was out in California, flew out for the night just to come sit down with us and discuss the updates on the screenplay and discuss concept and everything else. So, and that's when we sat down and he actually made a new trailer. We're sitting in there watching the trailer. And then we discussed, hey, let's think about taking this to television. And we gave the reason why. I mean, it's, you get picked up by a network. And it was just off the heels of Sons of Anarchy leaving the network.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And so we figured this could be a good spin-off for the network that Sons of Anarchy was on, and it would pick up the demographics of Sons of Anarchy. So, we talked to him about numbers and statistics and discussed, if we take this to series, then not only do you have a series, it can play out longer, then at the end of the series, you can go to big screen. And he was excited about it. He was open-minded about it and thought it was a great idea. So to sit there and say that, with the message from Lozano that we're going to take this to the network, the depression didn't play in one bit to that, as far as I know, because he was, like I said, when we discussed it, he was excited about it. He thought it was a great idea. And if we could follow through with that, then let's, and discuss it, and it's the right move, then we could go that route. So I don't know where the whole depression comes into play when it comes to regards to taking Gray State Network.
Yeah, I think that was, and that line, that narrative, I think, was injected into the story to help sell the official narrative that he was down and depressed, but he was actually excited for this entire project because at the same time he was working on his documentary called Gray State: The Rise, and he was going to release that on YouTube actually for free around Christmas time or the end of the year there in 2014, which was basically he was putting the final finishing touches on that. Now, were you involved at all with the Gray State: The Rise, or did he mention and talk to you guys about that piece, or is that just an individual project that he was working on the side?
Yeah, we weren't involved with that at all. I mean, we knew he was doing it. He was talking about doing it, but we had no involvement with that whatsoever. And
so releasing a documentary like that, 2.5-hour documentary called The Rise, he was going to give it away essentially for free on YouTube just to get the message out, inform people, educate the public. And that kind of flies in the face of folks saying that David was doing all this for the money. He was out for the money. He was out to get rich. He was trying to make a boatload of money on all these projects. And that was not David's personality. Can you talk to that a little bit? He knew he was going to make some money on this, but he was not out there. He was more to get the message out and his script. Is that correct, or was he a gold digger per se in Hollywood, trying to hoping you guys would bite on this story so he could become a millionaire?
Well, I can't speak for what his thought process is, but I can tell you from my run-ins with David, money is always a factor. I don't care what you do in business, money's a factor, right? David's an artist. David was an artist through and through, period, okay? He had an artist mindset, and he had a belief in what he was doing, okay? And he did it for the love of what he was doing. However, in the back of your mind, you're always thinking about money. And we discussed money with David. I don't remember the parameters of what we discussed, but we discussed money with David. And David's from my recollection, David's first love was the art that he was performing, okay? But there was always money as a factor. I mean, everybody's in business to make money. I'm not in business to give stuff away for free and, at the end of the day, be, who I am. I mean, it's a matter of there's always a money factor. Now, with our deal with David, I'm not going to discuss figures or anything like that, but our deal with David, we put out an offer to David to option the contract, which would have gave him some money up front, and then we would have went and ran with the film project project or the television project. David would have been a producer on the film, so he would have been getting paid to be a producer on the film. And then he would have reaped some of the benefits of whatever the film grossed. You know, we all would have. So that was the factor here. And, you know, it wasn't like David was a money-hungry grabbing guy and he was trying to weasel his way into Hollywood. David had an idea, and it was a very, very, very strong idea. And so that's why we all got together. You know, but again, he did it for the love of the art, but also knowing that, hey, this could be a payday.
Correct. Oh, very good. That's all good information. Trying to get the listeners to this, kind of get their head around David's personality and his mentality, because of a lot of that, in your talk right there, your description ties in with everyone that I've talked to. It aligns in with his personality. I never met David myself, never even spoke to him, so I started following this case after the bodies were found, but that's very much in alignment with what I've been hearing. The other concept that I'd like to square away with you guys from Michael Entertainment Group is there was conjecture that David, either the talks broke down and you guys cut him off, or David left, or David, quote, walked away, and the agreements just didn't work out. So it ultimately got down to there's two types of people out there following this case. They fall into two camps. One believed that Michael Entertainment Group essentially fired David or broke off the talks and says, screw you, get lost. Or David said, I know I got the offer, I'm all set to make big bucks. You know what, it's not for me because I want to run I do not want to be just a producer. I want to be the director on the film, and I don't want anything changed. I don't want anything altered with this script. Therefore, see you later. I'm going to move and part ways. Those are the two camps that we're dealing with, and if you could talk to that a little bit as far as what you think was more of the truth.
Neither one of them. Neither one of those even came into play when we were in discussions with David. And David knew he wasn't going to be the director. We discussed that early on with David because he wasn't a known director. So if we were going to go into this film with a $25 to $30 million budget, David couldn't be the director. We would have needed a top name director in the industry, which has clout. Okay, so and David knew that from day one, and David was fine with that. David was going to be actually in the AD. We were going to make David the assistant to the director, and that's what we discussed with David. So we didn't fire David, or we didn't get rid of David, or however that went, and he didn't walk away from us. I mean, there was never any of that, and I don't even know where those two ideas came from.
Yeah, I think there was
at least to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we never told David to get lost.
Yeah, and I think
tried contacting David after our September meeting or discussion. I tried contacting David for months to discuss things with nothing. I didn't hear from him or anything. And so I was getting more nervous myself, not nervous for our business transaction, but just nervous for him. But I said, listen, David and I became friends. Not only were we business places, but we became friends. So, you know, I mean, I called him on the holidays and wished him a happy Thanksgiving to him and the family, and you know, whatever. I mean, I did that numerous times until I heard the very, very disturbing news. You know. So.
Now, how was your how did you receive the news of this, and how did you process that after working so close and becoming friends with David?
I was in total shock. I didn't believe it.
And then,
I actually at the house. So Christmas comes, December 14, I guess it is, comes around. I told David on Christmas around December, which was well as maybe happy holidays. I went out of town for 2 years. When I got back, I called him, wished him a happy New Year, and then I still didn't hear anything, so I felt it was kind of weird. So I contacted a mutual friend that David and I both had, and asked this person, like, let me take a step backwards. Prior to that, I called this person saying, man, I haven't heard from David in like at least a month. Have you heard from him? He's like, nah, but it's the holidays. You guys got him in studio writing. He's been, when he gets
Comel, she was out there for one or two of the visits also, and took a picture of you guys standing together. What was your thoughts on Comel?
I thought she was amazing. Her and I have lots in common. I'm very heavily into nutrition and paleo and all that other stuff. And so her and I hit it off very, very well because we have the same interests, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, we had many great conversations about the whole paleo diet and nutrition and eating healthy and all that other stuff. So, I mean, we always had great conversations about that.
Oh, excellent. Was there any truth to David and Comel looking to buy a home or rent an apartment in L.A.? And if so, how close were they to doing this? Did they have a real estate agent or anything, or were you aware of that at all?
No, I was not aware of that at all.
Okay.
No idea.
Okay. That came up in some discussions, and I thought you might be aware of that. And then, just in the last few minutes here, what was your thought when you found out that David's mother, Kate, died unexpectedly in August?
I didn't even know about that either at the time. I didn't know about that either.
Okay.
So, David never made mention of that. And obviously, I would have known that. But I had no idea about it.
Oh, well, no, she died after the body was found.
Oh. Not prior.
No.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? I honestly don't remember.
Okay. It was about 8 months later, and she was, according to police reports, really the only person close in the family that questioned the narrative of this going down that way. So people, including myself, thought it strange that she mysteriously died. We never did get an answer as to how she died. She was young, healthy, worked 2 jobs, and then just mysteriously died on her back patio one night. And so they found her body. So I don't want to get into the conspiracy side of that, but I find that very strange. But that was news to you then as well.
Yeah, that's news to me. You know what? I didn't even hear about it. Not that I can remember.
Now, at the end of, it looks like my last question here is more legal related with Adam Gislason, and you might be able to have some comment on this, being in the business. Now, David went to his main character star in the program, was Danny August Mason, was his main actor, and wanted to get him out of the program, out of the copyright, out of any rights in the film, and so went to his lawyer Gislason to send Danny in an email, an attachment that just says, here you go, here's a form to sign to release your rights to this film, we're moving forward without you. And Danny never responded back to that. And then in December, around the 7th, David Crowley wrote back to Danny August Mason and says, what's the status on that? Have you signed that away, because I need to move forward, and we need to essentially for this project cut ties. Danny August Mason said that I need to run it by my lawyer before I sign anything, and I'll get back to you. And he never really did. So it was clear that we've got evidence that David wanted Danny out of the project. He never responded back. Is that a common thing with as far as signing away your rights? Because if David would have become wealthy and made this project, Danny would have been sitting on the sidelines with absolutely nothing. Is that a common thing, or how would someone take that if you were served with a paper like that, essentially, with your essentially one of your friends working on it?
I have no idea what David and Danny's deals were. I can't answer to that. And we had nothing behind that. We didn't have anything to do with that whatsoever. We didn't invite David to do that, so I don't even know why. I know that was brought up when we were doing our interview with Eric Nelson, but other than that, I have no idea why David did that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So,
yeah, he was on the verge around the. It seems like the September-October time frame is when he was doing some house cleaning with the guys on his project. And I don't know if you knew any of the fellas there, and I'm not going to ask you that, but he was cleaning house because he wanted to put together a new, quote, trustworthy team, and he was pulling away from everyone in his group, and I think that got spun into the media narrative that he was distancing himself and going into a deep depression and isolating himself, but really he was cutting ties with those closest to him because he didn't find them trustworthy. And I think that's what kind of leads into this whole, when you get into the motive of the potential murders. He's sitting on this script, whether David was alive or not, that script could have been budgeted for 25-30 million, and that was the value of it. That was the potential value of the script, whether David was involved with it or not. And if he was wiped out, knocked out of the way, someone else took it over, they would have been able to reap the benefits of this project. And so that's kind of the thinking that those of us have as far as a motive for this. And the only people I'm getting hit with hard as people against that theory is the people in the gray state. They're saying there was no deal, there was no value, the script was worthless, David wasn't working with anybody. And, so it comes into that whole means, motive, and opportunity that many think that it's actually the gray state members themselves had the potential greatest thing to gain if David was out of the picture. If the body was found and someone else came and presented you with the script, would it still be viable? Will it still be the same asset value? Or was David the linchpin holding it all together?
Well, when all this transpired, we backed away. We backed away because of all the conspiracy theories and everything else. We just, for a long time, for at least over a year, we didn't even discuss it. We just figured it was too toxic to even be involved with. So whoever got involved, I know since then they've made something. I know there were a couple guys out there that contacted me saying, hey man, we made this thing, we want you to see it, what's your thoughts? And we've never even got involved. Then we had a conversation at least a year, if not a little longer than a year after David's death, with David's dad, and I think it was Danny Mason. I think it was. I can't remember for sure, but we had a conversation with them about picking this thing back up and running with it, because as far as I remember, David's dad got the rights to the film, or got the rights to David's estate, so yeah. He wanted to do something with it. So we started talking with David's dad, and then nothing ever transpired out of it.
Yeah, and it seems like I would bet that the other person would have been Danny August Mason, because 4 months after the bodies were found, Danny was already in process of getting the Gray State name trademark with an attorney to get the the name and a phrase Gray State trademarked already. So he was moving forward with the project. So it must have been him, was what would be my guess.
Yeah, it must have been.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got to let you go here, Mike. I thank you for your time. But do you have any other closing thoughts to wrap this up, to help clear the air if there's anything out there that you can think of?
Nothing I can think of. I mean, again, I'll reiterate myself, but we always had a pleasant experience with David. We never saw any downside to David whatsoever. Very, very motivated young man. It was actually a pleasure working with David. He took all of our ideas and all of our thoughts and took them to heart, and never balked about it whatsoever to us. So, if he did something on his own time or, around someone else, we were never privy to it whatsoever. So.
Excellent. All right. Thanks. That makes sense. All right, Mike, thanks for your time. I think it's very helpful information. I'll get this out so people can make their own conclusions from it, but at least have some basis from someone in the know, someone worked closely with him in his last final months, and I think it's very, very helpful. So I can't say enough. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Have a good day.
Yep, you too. Bye-bye.
Yep. Blog Talk Radio.
Digest episode 23 with your host, Kristen Coffin. Today is May 2nd, 2019.
we would like to share a prayer with all of you who risk it all to seek and share truth for the betterment of humanity. This broadcast is brought to you in part by Eternal Affairs Media and DarkDocs.com.
Welcome to Dark Docs Digest, episode 23, a Gray State special with Dan Hennon and Greg Fernandez Jr., who were in the Netflix documentary A Gray State. Greg Fernandez Jr., of course, has been on the show several times. He's one of the co-creators of Resist the Grove, and he was in our documentary They Are Here to Save the World when we went to the Bohemian Grove last year, and we're going to be meeting again with him this year. And now we have one of Eternal Affairs Media's new talents, Dan Hennon, who is also in the Gray State Netflix documentary. Oh, wait, I got a little feedback here. Hello. All right. Yes, so if you guys want to kick this thing off, you guys are the experts. I've been spending hours, if not days, on all of your research. It's just endless, it feels like.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg. Start things off if you want.
I'm sure. I mean, I guess for anybody that doesn't know about this case, we have David Crowley. He's a filmmaker. He was a former U.S. soldier who was working on a project called Gray State. And on January 17th, 2015, his body, his wife's body, and his 5-year-old daughter's body are all found inside of their home in Minnesota in Apple Valley. And that's where it all starts. And from there, it gets pretty damn crazy. Now, you would think that 3 bodies in this house for what could be 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we really don't know. There really is no time of death. But you would think that that would be the craziest part of this whole story. But that's where the whole thing starts. And from there, that's when things get really crazy as far as trying to find the truth to what happened. Were they murdered? If David Crowley, who is guilty of killing his family, why do we not see any evidence that points towards that? Why are there so many people that are so certain that David Crowley is guilty that they will go to such lengths as to make threats, as to cyberbully, to play games, to do all of these things that truth seekers don't do, to do all of these things that real people are not supposed to do? Why has there been so much games? Why has there been so much drama when all we're asking is one simple question? Where is the evidence that proves David Crowley guilty? I don't think that's a big question. I think it should have been a simple question for the media, for the alternative media, for the family, for the friends, but most importantly, for the investigators. None of them can answer this question. In this country, you are innocent until proven guilty, and David Crowley has never been proven guilty. Therefore, he is innocent.
Yeah, I agree. This is Dan Hennon. I created the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook page back on January 19th, 2015, 2 days after the bodies were discovered. After first hearing the official narrative, I knew something was up. None of these stories seemed to make sense. Nothing added up, and I wanted justice for this family. David was 29 years old. In shape, healthy guy, working on a lot of projects, and his wife was Kamel. She was 28, and then they had a 5-year-old daughter, Rania, and all 3 were found dead from a gunshot wound in the head in their house, and the bodies were laying there after Christmas, they think up until 3 weeks before the bodies were found. None of the neighbors heard any gunshots. There was no problems with the family. David had just signed a deal with a Hollywood producer to make his story, his script, into a movie or a web series or a television series. One of the options, they were still finalizing that, but it hadn't come to fruition. And then his wife started an at-home business and was in the process of putting together, possibly writing a book on dietitian nutrition and whatnot. And then the daughter was in kindergarten. And so all 3 were found. And we're talking over the Christmas holidays is where we start finding out that there was no welfare checks by family, friends, neighbors, or relatives. And then we get over the New Year's Day holiday, still no welfare check. And then we get into the first of the new year where the daughter goes back to school and missed the first 2 weeks of school, and no welfare check performed on the family. So right away it seemed odd. And keep in mind that this story came right on the heels of the Captain Philip Marshall family in Calaveras County, California, where they were found all dead of a single gunshot wound in the head in February of 2013, along with the family dog. This story was all the same way, except the dog was living, the dog was there, the family dog was in the home, and when it was announced that body parts were missing from the human remains, they blamed it on the dog scavenging the bodies because he was so hungry. And what we've got
Test 1, 2, test 1, 2, 3. Hey, Romeo, not sure if you can hear me. Give me 1 second. One second, peeps. Still testing a lot of this stuff out here. Thanks for helping me with the test. Alright. So I'm going to need to know how the audio is here. Probably going to put the lapel mic up, but just curious where I have the lapel mic right now. Curious how good, how bad the audio is. If anybody can help with that. I'm going to fire up this second screen here, so that way we can communicate here. And in the future, in the very near future, we're going to have a whole nother way where we can actually talk, where people can actually call in to something like this, or to where it's a screen share, and everybody calls in, whoever wants to call in, if you want to talk, if you want to say anything about the Crowley case. That's the goal. So not sure if you guys can hear me, how well the audio is, but it will make a big difference. This will be a good test, actually. I'll look at my password, okay? All right. Let's go second here. Pause this. Okay, that's weird. And of course, battery is gonna die here. So just give me a few more minutes. I'll go over any questions, comments, or concerns first before I get going. I've only got a few things that I really want to talk about here, so anything else will be good to go. But if I don't get this power cord in, none of it is going to matter. So I apologize for that. I know how that can be very annoying. Alright, let's do this. Okay. Probably going to come back to another stream here. Thanks everybody for test this out unless I can. Curious to see if it's still live or not. Oh, we're live. Okay. Excellent. Isn't it fun being live? Isn't it awesome? All right. I'm probably stepping all over the microphone right now. So we've tested that out where the mic was. Now we're going to test it out where the mic should actually be. Surprised nobody has really found where the mic should actually be here. I should know that. So, all right. Get this started up. Hey everybody, I'm going to go right down the list here. And we will get going. Hey Romeo. Hey Ruby. Yes, I'm finally home. I'm here. It took me a while, but I'm a little late. She-Wolf, how's it going? Shannon, always good to see you. Okay. Oh, really? Mic sounds good. Goes in and out as you move. Yeah, because I had the mic kind of placed on top of here just to see how it was. So when I'm flipping, but I think it's better where I'm at right now, right? Hope so. Need more volume. Okay, good. A bit of static. Okay, how's it right now? How's everything doing? How are the doggies loving it? How are they liking it? Be very important before I move on. And like I said, I just got a few things to cover here, going back over the 485-page document, the last one that we got, the last 488, I believe, 488. So this is the big one. This is the big puppy. Next will be to kind of separate all the different things in this and to separate all of the data that we have and try to put all of the separate data pieces in their own PDF to make it easy for people to find these documents, to look through these documents. So obviously some things I do want to take out, and I already have. I don't know if I did in this version or not, but, like people's phone numbers, stuff like that. A lot of that I don't think is necessary, but, the first 51 pages are just the actual evidence chain of custody, of what they gathered. So it tells you everything about item 1A, right? It goes through all the different dates from 123 to 8/03/2015. Things like that maybe, this is good. It's good that we got this, but compare this. This is what we got, probably with a few others. This is what we got from the Minnesota BCA. Compare that to the 94 pages and 464 photos that we got from the Apple Valley Police. It's a big difference. And we got more photos from the Minnesota BCA, so I got nothing bad to say about them. At least they have all these documents. Okay, sounds better. Okay, excellent. Yeah, is there any thunder? You got any thunder going on over there? I'm curious. I'd be curious to know here. Anyways, we're going to get rolling. So, going through the book and trying to make sure, just fact-checking, going back and forth, a lot of these different things. So what I started to do, I don't know if I did it with every exact thing, but I started to just kind of note these, just note certain pages that I wanted to make sure that I came back to. Like, for instance, this page here, and of course the pages aren't numbered here, but this is the narrative for BCA for their number S15-00662. And this is going over David Crowley's fingerprint card. So this is the fingerprint card from the FBI, from Travis Yarborough of the FBI, to Christopher Olson of the DPS, some part of the Minnesota BCA. And he says, Chris, here's what I got. Let me know if you need anything else. So they're getting David's fingerprint. And let's check the date on this. So this is 121. So at 121, it looks like, well, the original was at 121. So sometime after 121, possibly 122, 2015, is when the police finally get the the fingerprint card that ties David to, or that could possibly tie David to any of the fingerprints that are found inside of that house, as long as they test for the fingerprints. And they did do a lot of tests, but the tests show that they were inconclusive. There's only one that was conclusive. I believe it was on page 30 or page 31, and it's David's left middle finger. That's it. That's the only thing that they could tie to it. But looking at this date here, 121, and you're like, wait a minute, they don't even have his, prints. They haven't done anything, and everything is already starting with a double murder-suicide I believe by January 18th. Less than 24 hours, right before they're going to actually look at David Crowley's body. The police theory, the press release number 2, is already saying the public is not in danger. We have our man. That's what they're basically saying. And so that's, just... okay, so that thing stuck out to me, obviously, because I made a little note here. And, one thing, okay, well, it's one thing here. Well, it's one thing there. Pretty soon, you have a whole bunch of just different things that just don't seem to add up. And we'll see. We'll see how far we get. So, all right, so no, okay. Just enough to freak out the dogs. Okay, well, we don't want any thunder or anything like that freaking out the dogs, lightning, all that good stuff. In Northern California today, it was actually sprinkling. It wasn't raining, but it was sprinkling, which I thought was weird. I haven't seen that in a long time in the summertime like this. We're supposed to be in summer. It's interesting. So I made a note of that. But if you haven't had a chance to go through these documents, I know it looks like a lot. These are single pages, by the way. So it's not like there's something on two sides. So just cut this in half if you're really thinking, oh man, I got to read through that. I got to go through that. You don't have to, and nobody should fault you if you don't have the time, if you can't take the time to. But I just believe there's a lot of good data in here for you fellow researchers that are researching this stuff. I believe it's very important not only to go through these documents and to document things, to make notes. What sticks out to you? What do these notes tell you? What do these pages tell you? That's what really matters. Not what I tell you what it says. I know what it says. I think anybody that can read this knows what it says also. And what it doesn't say is more important. So, into the latent prints, right? So we're getting back, this is 122. What it looks like. Let me make sure, because okay, so page 54. So what I'm reading from is from page 55 of the 488 page document, the most recent PDF document that we got, going over all of this data, which is a lot here. There is a lot here, and there's a lot of good stuff here, and there's a lot of stuff that you could see that they did right, that is really impressive, especially some of the bullet stuff, which is about halfway through. Some of that's really good. Just how they try to match up the bullets, try to match up 57 to, I think, 31, and to a test bullet fired from item 1, and how similar they are and all that. And that's all great and everything, but stuff like that I found very helpful so far. So Joe Cooksley says, hey, Chris, I talked to Marty in Latent Prints. He said he thinks this can be used for comparison, and that if the actual card is needed, that it could be requested at a later time. So this also tells us that they did not have David's actual card, his fingerprint card. Would they have like a photocopy? That's kind of what it looks like. So they're using a photocopy or something like that. I don't know. And this is his military fingerprint card. I need to make sure that that's clear. The Minnesota BCA, yes, one second. The Minnesota BCA was requesting from the FBI David Crowley's military fingerprint card. So that is a fact. Okay, one second. Obviously, my cat takes precedence. She knows when we're live. I'm convinced that she knows. This is what she does. One second here. Come on. Let's go. What's wrong? All right, sorry about that. I'm back. I'm going to look in the chat room to see if I didn't miss anything. So, let's see. Enough to freak the dogs out. Inside the Cave, thanks for joining us here. Hopefully I didn't miss everyone. Hey, Michaela, thanks for joining us as well. Trying to get caught up on just the chat, and so I'll be looking over here from time to time in the chat. Let's see. Oh, wow, my head looks really greasy. That's all right. Pretty funny. Okay, and now maybe I need to sit down. Maybe I need to pull the mic up a little bit more. It's cutting off the top of my head. Maybe I'll work on that a little bit. As long as I think, okay, as long as I'm a little bit down, that should be all right. Okay, so the notes tell me that the beer in Minnesota is really strong. Wow. I guess one day I'm going to have to test that out myself. I do plan on going out to Minnesota one of these days. One of these days that will happen. No problem. And I'm not a beer drinker, but yeah, I guess we'll see. We'll do some research on that. How about that? All right. Let's keep moving on here. Again, thanks everybody for joining us. Sorry, I forgot to put the mic up here. This is where it's supposed to be. This is where it's the best. I'm still trying to figure out what side, this and that, but I think right here generally seems to come out the best here. And I'll try to slouch down a little bit. So, okay, so we went through that, right? This is David. So on page 55, just to clarify, just the first point that we're making here on page 55, they do mention David Crowley's military fingerprint card. The BCA is requesting it, and they are requesting it. They put in a request to the FBI, Travis Yarborough, and what it looks like is that this is a copy of the military fingerprint card. So, according to what Joe Cooksley tells Chris Olson, both of them are with the Minnesota BCA. Joe Cooksley tells him. He says, "Hey, Chris, I talked to Marty and Leighton Prince. He said he thinks this can be used for comparison and that if the actual card is needed, that it could be requested at a later time." So the question is, would this military card be requested at a later time if they could not prove that David Crowley could be tied to any of these things? Or were they just looking for just one? Did they just need one? Because they did find one on that notepad. They have one fingerprint of David Crowley's left middle finger, but that's it. So, I mean, at that point, do you say, you know what? Yeah, maybe we do need this card. Maybe we actually need this military card. Maybe they got it later, but I didn't see that either. And that's why it's very important because, like you said, I mean, there's a lot to go through. Here. All right, so the mistake, okay, on this next page I have a mistake here. I'm not sure what the mistake is. I didn't note it, so I will have to make sure that I come back to that one. So keep that one. That's why whenever you're doing notes, it's always good to, make sure you not just mark the page, but mark what you want to be covered into this page. This was another one that I found interesting, and this must be probably about 54, 55, 56, page 57. I did not number these, and I will go back. Some of the ones I did number, but some of these I did number. So page 57 is a conversation, and I think what is weird with this is it says, Sergeant said, due to case management issues, indented writing will not be conducted. And LMH, which is, I think, Lisa, LMH is only to scan the question evidence going to latent print and nothing else. So, again, it's like, wow, not even the real prints, not taking more time, and this was dated 4/29/2015, Lisa Kinselli. So I'm not sure if why more wasn't done when let me put it like this. If they were so content on blaming this on David and they're not finding what they're looking for, why not do those more tests? Why not put in more? I mean, to me, I think that's the problem. Of course, this is what, January, February, March, April. So this is in April of 2015. By that time, the friends and the family are all brainwashed pretty much into thinking that David Crowley is guilty. Now, I think a lot of them have doubts, and they express those doubts, but it still comes back to the same thing of that David Crowley is guilty, when that is obviously not what we're seeing here. Another note that I made here was on page 58, and I'm going to read a little bit of this. Here we go. Okay, from Joe Cooksley, and this is dated 8/3/2015. This is a phone conversation between Joe Cooksley and Brian Bone. Cooksley says, spoke with Brian Bone to notify him that the LP report was issued on 7/31/2015. So the report is issued on 7/31/2015. Seems like by April, they're pretty much like, we don't need to do any more. It's all good. Don't need to worry about that. Let's keep moving on, right? And he says, I also asked him being Brian Bone, I also asked him if he felt that any additional question document work will need to be done on writing that was previously documented on the notepad from the office, the apparent known writing samples, and the images of the writing on the living room wall. He said that further question documents analysis was not needed at this time. So by 7/31/2015, they pretty much got everything that they need from the additional question documents, writing that was previously documented on the notepad from the office, the apparent known writing samples, and the images of the writing on the living room wall. They were done by 7/31/2015, which is right before they closed this case. That's pretty much it for that one. All right, one more second as my darling cat here comes back in. We're going to skip to page 94. Going to be your job. All right? You have plenty of food, have everything you need. Yeah, that's one of the flaws of going live here. When you have a live cat living its life. Page 94. All right, let's see what the note I made here. Not sure why I made this note. That's interesting. 218. Okay, I made this note because I was trying to note anything that was tied with the police coming back in February. Page 95 is a very important one. If you guys can, if you get a chance, please look at page 95 of the big BCA 488 pager, because 485 page. I believe. I keep going back and forth because the last two are very similar, but have a lot of different documentation in it. So this last request that we got on page 95, this is some of Joe Cooksley's notes about the bullet in the attic. And I think there's a lot of good stuff here. Some of it is foreign to me. A lot of it is foreign, I should say. And some of his handwriting is hard to understand too. But I think this kind of gives us somebody could take this page, take this note, and probably figure out where they're saying that the bullet was coming from, where it was going, where they think, blah, blah, blah. We can kind of guess. I kind of have a good idea, but I think this really, if my idea of what I think in my head doesn't match what's on here, then obviously I'm going to go with this. That's on this paper. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop there. Doesn't mean, whatever is here, that's it. It's truth. It's golden. No. But I'm going to start here. So I obviously go back and forth. Like, it could be this. Oh, it could be that. Okay, well, this is what they say here. Well, can that be true because of this, because of that? So just work it all out, right? We're just working all of this stuff out. But page 95, I think, is a very good page if people could go through that. And we did have somebody, I don't know whatever happened to him, but we did have somebody who was going to actually do this test and actually in a safe environment, in an open environment where nobody could get hurt or anything, kind of build build a wall, right? Build almost like a room with a ceiling on it, and shoot the same caliber, shoot the same thing, shoot the same type of bullet into the ceiling for distance, to try to measure distance and see what it would look like, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure a lot of people don't need that, it doesn't need to be done, but somebody offered to do it, and I thought it was a good idea. And there are no bad ideas when it comes to really trying to figure out what happened in this case, as long as your heart is in the right place, as long as you're doing it to get to the truth. That's all that matters. Don't worry about anything else. So that was that note. Page 96 is really, chicken scratchy, but it also deals with item 57 with that bullet. So I was hoping, people might want to go through that one as well. Hey, Beach Waves, how's it going? Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to read some of your comments that you've made on the videos. I'm so far behind. I got the Bohemian Grove thing coming up too, and the book and everything else, and just work, all that stuff. So I do see it, and I will make sure that I get back to you with those comments, to check out what those comments are, because if people are willing to take the time to make comments, to make respectful comments, just good comments, not comments that are purposely made to just stir up trouble. I do want to make sure that I take the time to respond to you, and not to give a quick response, but to actually read what you're writing, look at it, and give you an honest response based on what I'm thinking about this case right now. That's all that I can do. So I will make sure that I do that. All right. Let's see. Yeah, cat is a star. Page 100. I have another note here. This might deal with the presence. Oh, this is what I wanted to know. So on page 100, what I was looking at is no signs of forced entry to exterior doors or windows. Very nice. I'm so glad that they point that out about 5,000 times, but can't seem to look up and see if there's any holes or anything, any blood, anything. I mean, there's blood on the wall. On the living room wall. Anyways, they looked at the chandelier. They looked at the lights in the kitchen. They looked at the Christmas tree. They were looking in that area. Didn't see it. Didn't see a big bullet hole right there. Okay, so anyways, page 100, the tramp down snow. So it says, and I'm thinking it says tramped, right? I was thinking like trampled down snow in front walkway, trampled down snow on west side of the house and on the deck near the sliding door. Trampled, I don't know if it's trampled or tramped, but tramped down snow in backyard. No discernible foot plus shoe prints. So that was just kind of where there's snow everywhere. Tramped down snow, whatever it is. So the BCA, Joe Cooksley, is noticing this. Of course, he came later, so this is after all the cops and the neighbors and everybody else have been walking around the whole house. And, I don't know. We can only go by what those first photos show, as far as what was tramped down before the police tramped something down and after. But Joe Cooksley does make sure to note that. And so I think that's why I marked this little note here. Moving on. Only a few more, guys. Just wanted to make this really quick. But I just felt, going back through this and looking at all of this stuff over and over again has really helped me. It really has. Let's see. Okay, I made a note here. 3 deceased, package presents on the front. Neighbor walked to check in on the family. Saw 3 dead in the living room. Called police. Dog has been removed from residence. Shoe prints in snow around back and deck. I'm not sure why I made this note here. See if there's anything. Oh, maybe I just wanted to document who was there. Maybe, I don't know. But I will work on that as well. Maybe the shoe prints. Area and blood. The following areas were tested by BMW. The living room, item 13, pH plus. Apparently bloody footprints near the island. That's item 14 and 15, both pH plus. Wall of island, items 16 and 17. Then it has 17 scratched out for whatever reason. And let's see, living room floor, items 18 through 20. Kitchen floor, item 21. Item 21 on the kitchen floor I think is really odd too, that it's just kind of like there. It's pretty random, but that's all right. Blood on the laptop and a key on the laptop. On the island counter, tissue box. Not sure what I thought was so important at that point, but obviously don't think it's too important now. But hey, Kath. Hey, Kath. Kath or Kath? Kath Middleton. Hi from the UK. Let's see. Inside the cave, I do find it kind of weird that the cops and friends are monitoring a government hit or something. Yeah, everything that we heard, and I was going back through my notes about Jim Gummert, and everything, all of the criticism, right? The big thing, one of the early things, one of the first things that they say is that we think that it's a government hit. It's all a government hit. It's all a government hit. It's like they give you two choices. Either it's a government hit or David Crowley's guilty. Neither of those can really be proven at this point, I don't think. So I thought that was kind of odd. Yeah, no one mentioned it except them. I mean, there were so many people, the alternative media, and this is what frustrates me about the alternative media is when they come so quick out and just whoever it is, different sites for whatever their reasons are, come out and tell you this was a government hit. They pretty much got it all figured out in about 30 seconds, right? And we haven't even gotten all of these documents. We haven't even gotten like so many different things, haven't looked at it that deep, but they've already got it figured out. So it's that does kind of make people roll their eyes and not take it seriously, especially when that's the easy target for people that are looking for anything that might help cast doubt, for anything that would help them show that, to kind of make us question, right? To cast doubt about the theory that maybe there was foul play. Right? They don't even want us thinking about that. They don't want us going there. So I think that is a lot of it. And when you see this stuff over and over again, it is a program. It's part of the same program, right? Right, Kitty? It sure is. Let's see. I have noted here. Item 11 and 12, 17 were pheno-tested by AB. Item 39 was pheno-tested by JAC, which is Joe Cooksley. Items 13 through 16, 18 through 21, 23 through 29, and 32 through 35 were pheno-tested by BMW. And no, that's not by the car. I think it's Beth something Wolf. So this kind of shows us what was tested. Yet when we're looking at the results of item 11 and 12, we don't get both of those. I believe we only get the results for item 11, but this shows that that item 12 was tested. If it was tested, why don't we have the result of item 12 here? And let me see if I should have marked some of these pages. So that is on. It's going to be too far back, probably. Definitely past 100. So definitely past 100 there. I will get that photo. But I mean, it's stuff like that where they're saying that they tested these things, and then there's no result of the test. Pheno test, okay, so maybe it's just not, obviously it's a different type of test, but it was just interesting. Why 12? 12, item 11 is the A in Ala'u on the blood wall. Item 12 is the B in Akbar. And they test the A, right, and we get a result for the A. We don't get a result for the B, which made me think that they didn't even test it. They weren't even looking at it. But notes say, no, they did some type of test. All right. Moving on from there. Okay, Inside the Cave says, the movie he was making definitely shed the government in a negative light. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, you're definitely right there. I mean, I don't know if... how far he was trying to take it, but definitely when you have police agencies breaking down your door and taken you out of your house, yeah, I can definitely see that. Like the government would have to be pretty bad to be in that type of a situation that we would have to worry about. Yeah, it's very, very serious. Another page that I noticed here, the firearm worksheet. Okay, so you'll see the firearm worksheet, maybe a little bit about halfway down. The thing that I noticed here that I did not notice before, and when I went back and looked at the photos that we have of the gun, it does show this. How may I help you? How may I help you? You want to come sit over here? You want to get on camera? No, she doesn't want to get on camera. So what I noticed about this firearm worksheet is there is a black rubber Hogu grip sleeve on grip. So there's like a black rubber sleeve on this grip, which I did not notice. Now I see it. I see what they're saying now. I went back and looked at it. It doesn't mean too much, but still it's interesting to have that rubber grip. I don't know. I just found that